What's up, everyone? It's Tuesday, it's 1 p.m. Pacific, and that can only mean one thing. It's time for GameFace, episode 383 on SIFTD Games at SIFTD.net. Here to do that with me today, of course, is Matt Keil. What's up, Matt? How are you?
All right.
How's your week been?
Boring.
Yeah.
Game-wise. Like, nothing happened.
You're not alone, brother.
Nothing happened. I went back and played Assassin's Creed Mirage for a while.
Wow. That shows you where we're at this week.
I was reminded of the quest system, the system of how you solve quests and stuff in that by Outcast, A New Beginning.
Wow.
That same sort of, here's the thing, figure out what you got to do, and then like it fills in the gap and you go to the next thing.
Right. I forgot about that.
So I went back. I'm like, I want to see that with that again. It was still installed on my Xbox, so I went back and played it. Like, that game is still pretty good.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that's how I describe it. Pretty good.
Yeah, it's not like it's the bones of something really interesting.
Yeah.
If they follow up on that structure of kind of piecing together, because I like the piecing together the investigation of like the who you're supposed to assassinate in the core of, it kind of unfolds nicely. And having to go different places, like, oh, search around here, like, go, cool, like, oh, that looks weird. Is that? Oh, that is the thing I'm looking for. Cool. And like slowly it kind of comes together, and it's like it's a nice way to sort of make a little mystery story. It would be nice if they can figure out something to make that a little larger scale and more engaging for the Ninja one.
Yeah.
Assuming that still exists.
I mean, it should. It's supposed to come out this year.
Theoretically. I mean, that's the rumor, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. Do you think they're going to make another one like Mirage? Because it did not sell particularly well.
You mean like a smaller kind of...
More self-contained.
I mean, that is supposedly what Hexa is, so I think they've already sunk the cost to that one thing.
I didn't realize that, actually, about Hexa.
As I believe, it's like the big one is the Ninja one, and those were the smaller ones, and there's another big one that we don't know about.
Hexa, by the way, is the Witchcraft one, which is the one I'm actually most excited for of all the Assassin's Creed.
Definitely the most interesting setting.
Yeah.
I think part of the problem with Mirage was it just didn't look different enough.
Yeah.
I liked it, and I thought Baghdad was pretty well
We
realized.
both enjoyed it, yeah.
Even if it is very brown. I mean, that's the
brown
most,
and tan.
Well, that's the most notable thing about the game is, like, for a second, I was looking at, like, some of the investigation things. Like, go to this bureau, go to that bureau. I'm like, oh, are there cities I haven't found yet? I'm like, no, it's all just districts. It's it is actually really small.
Yeah, relatively speaking, yeah.
And it's just sort of it's a little one note as a result, environment-wise, and that's fine. But I think you look at that game sort of in advertisements, and it just sort of looks like Assassin's Creed.
Yeah, for sure.
I would imagine the Ninja one, and even more so a Witch Trial one, will be notably striking in their difference. So
I'm excited for Hexy for sure. But that shows you where we're at, party people. Matt's going back and playing Assassin's Creed Mirage. We do have new games.
I back and played that, and I played some X4 Foundation.
Wow.
Because there's a 7.0 version coming out with like new stuff in it.
Oh, really?
So I was like, I'll go back and refresh my memory on that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was a retro.
One of these kind of weeks. We do have new games in today's show, though. Believe it or not, we have 3 new games that we're going to discuss in today's show.
My copy of Iuden Chronicles shipped.
Oh, good.
So
maybe next week we'll be able to review that.
I have no idea.
We'll see.
It's coming from Yeti, which is like could be a week, could be after the release date. We don't know.
This month is a lot like last month. The first week and a half or 2 weeks are really weak for game releases, and then the last 2 weeks are just like loaded. But the good news is we still have plenty of topics today. There's tons of housekeeping in today's episode. Still have 3 games to discuss, so we do have a pretty good episode for you guys.
Yeah, this month is so dire. I'm looking forward to Sandland.
Yeah.
That's where we are. And I do not like that art style at all. But I'm like, well, that's an open world shooting things game. I feel like that's what I'm going to play when that comes out.
You are going to play it.
Yeah.
Do not play the demo, I would say. The demo I don't think is a good representation of what the game's going to be.
I didn't get the impression it was from what you were saying last week.
We're actually going to talk about another game today where the demo isn't a great representation.
It's also weird how I found out that that demo is basically what they had journalists play last summer. And then they weren't allowed to talk about it for months. And why?
What were you holding on to that for? Maybe because they were afraid the journalists thought it was crap.
I don't know. What changed between that and then? That's what
makes no sense. Yep.
It's a very arbitrary rollout.
Yeah. Before we get into housekeeping, let's check in with you guys, see what y'all are up to on this fine Tuesday afternoon. Let me scroll up here quickly and see if we got all our Twitch. Well, we got a bunch of Twitch Prime today. This is awesome, guys. Thank you. Everyone's saying what's up from where everyone's doing a roll call today before the show from where they're from. God of Gamblers 33, thank you. David Nordic, thank you for Twitch Prime. Matter of fact, from Vancouver. We really have our audience is from everywhere. Too Quick Capri, thank you for Twitch Prime. 57 months, that's awesome, man. Matter of fact, Yuji Naka making an ass of himself again. Yep. He better be careful. He might end up going right back to, he might go to jail because he's basically on parole right now. Like, they may send him in there. He better be careful what he's doing on social media. Cinetyke, thank you for Twitch Prime. 44 months, that's awesome. There's Eric Cartmanez. Who else we got in here? Vincent says he's at the presumed final boss in Bloodstain. Props to you, my friend. It took a lot of fortitude to get there, I know, because I made it to that end boss. That game was a long, long game. Glottis021, thank you for Twitch Prime. Rosencrantz, thank you for subscribing at Tier 1. That's awesome. You've subscribed for 49 months, a 36-month streak. That's incredible. Thank you. And Cinetype from Portugal. Welcome. Yeah, it's really crazy. Here's the Edster from Northern Ireland. It really is insane. Our audience is everywhere. Like, we are half U.S., but the other 50% of our audience, literally, there's maybe, like, I think 18% from the U.K., and then the rest is just evenly distributed, like, around the world. It's really kind of crazy. Like, it's really awesome. Like, that's what the internet, that's the power of the internet, what it can do. It can bring all of us together, all these like-minded people together into one group, something we definitely couldn't have done back in before the early 90s, really. Even the early 90s when the internet first launched. Like, I remember I went to Nintendo.com, and it had a BBS there.
Right.
And first of all, you go to load Nintendo's page and you watch each image just slowly scan and appear. And then you go to the BBS and you type something and you submit it, and it would take like 90 seconds before it actually appear on the BBS.
Oh, we had Usenet. Usenet was international.
Yeah.
That was really big. I remember my it wasn't my roommate, my suite mate, because we had rooms around a central bathroom in my college, and Jeff had I had a computer and Jeff had a computer, and what I used it for games, and he used it for porn. And
or you could use it for both.
And he would sit there, and he would sit there and like, because he'd go to like the Usenet stuff, and like it was have like all the binary files for like all the porn pictures he was looking for, but it was it was all dial up through the college. Like the college gave you like it wasn't hardwired, but it was like a separate line for internet connection, and then you had another line for your phone. And so he'd be on it, and he like set it to download, and he'd come back and talk to us and go back and see if he liked the picture, because the picture loaded, so it's like go back, it's like fuck, an ugly one, and he'd start over with another, like he had no idea what he was gonna get when he tried to, and it's just like
that's hilarious. That's the way the internet was, though. You click on something and you go make a sandwich, and you come back, and maybe it'll be there when you come back.
Like my big empathizing with him was like I had to set mine to download the Marathon 2 demo overnight because it was 50 megabytes. Like, literally, I said it, I went to sleep, I woke up, I went to class, I came back, it was ready. Like, it took like 12 hours.
There was an entire disk drive release that was, 100 megs? A zip drive. Wasn't it 100 megs?
Zip drives
and people like their minds were... I had a zip drive.
That was where you put all your word processing stuff.
It's like I had everything on my one zip disk. It seemed like it could hold the whole world on it. And it was only 100 megs.
Oh, yeah.
It's really crazy.
I was so excited when I got a Mac Performa, like I think sophomore year. It was 16 megabytes of RAM and 150 megabyte hard drive. Like, who could ever fill that up? That's impossible.
Yeah. Here's a funny porn story. So when it's not really related to porn, but when I first moved here, whenever they forced us to move to LA, whenever G4 purchased Tech TV and we came down here to do XPlay, I was looking for apartments. And of course, I think everybody who moves to LA when you first move here, I think everybody thinks in their mind, well, I want to live in Hollywood. That's where the fun is. That's where the excitement is.
No,
well,
you can tell who's never been to LA before when they're like, I want to see Hollywood. And you're like, we're going to drive down Hollywood Boulevard, and you're going to decide if you actually want to get out of the car.
Well, as it turns out, most of our friends from Tech TV did end up moving into Hollywood. I did not, because the first apartment I went to look at, it was like some ungodly amount of money. And I was like, oh, but if it's in Hollywood, maybe I'll pay the extra money to live in Hollywood where the clubs are and everything. I was really into DJing and stuff back then. And I go to meet the guy. He takes me up. It's like in the top floor of the apartment, and it's like an attic of the building or whatever, and it's got like these slope roofs. And he opens it, and this room is just trash. Like, they had not done anything from when the prior tenant moved out. We move into the place, and I start looking around, and I don't know if they were filming porn in this place, but there was just old porn magazines and tapes everywhere. and then like 4 disgustingly stained mattresses on the floor and gallons of lube. And I just looked at all this, and I was just like, you're really going to show me this apartment like this? And I was like, is this the way LA is? Like, people are just going to take an apartment like this because they're so desperate or whatever? And I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to go back to the west side and start looking. But
nowadays, that would be $3,000.
Right, exactly. And they're like, and you're taking the lube out.
You get lube included.
Lube included. Yeah. You don't throw it out.
Yeah, no.
You're going to need that if you live in Hollywood.
You're going to need that when it comes to the fucking deposit.
Hilarious. So anyway, just a little anecdote about my first week moving to LA. Because when we first got here, they put us up in temp housing. And we had like a month or 2 months to live in like these apartments where you could take your time finding a place to live. And so
yeah, I had a place when we came down because like I came down with Adam and Fahey and we used God, I can't remember his name. It was one of the lead guys on Screensavers, and he gave us his realtor. And we came down and she showed us a bunch of places, and I got my apartment that way because mine was like a modern condo. And Adam and Fahey were like, "No, we don't want to. We want.
Yeah, they want an old.
They wanted to live in like an old townhouse, a creaky townhouse, like up on the spine of Fairfax or something." I'm like, "This is great. This is double
like
my.
Brand new.
This is double my the square footage I have in San Francisco for half the rent. Yeah, I'm gonna get that." So that's what I did, and I lived there for 13 years.
Yeah.
But yeah, and then like. But I remember coming down and like I was on an air mattress with it. I brought my original Xbox and Burnout 3.
Yeah.
That was like a handful of games, and we got here, I went to Best Buy and I bought a tiny little like 20-inch TV, and I put it next to the air mattress, and I just played Burnout 3 on an air mattress in an empty apartment for like 5 days until the fucking moving van finally showed up and gave me my shit. Like it was what a weird time.
It was a weird time of transition because
20 years ago this summer.
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard to believe we've been here for 20 years. But I don't regret it. I love LA. So
definitely better than the first time I lived in LA.
Yeah.
That was I lived up in the valley in Woodland Hills.
Well, that's all you need to say.
Which is all. But there's always a porn connection though because I was so bored during the day because I didn't have an actual day job until like 2 months into living here, and then I ended up on the graveyard shift at a 24-hour fitness in Thousand Oaks. But I would hang out at like a Starbucks or coffee shops in like near there in like Van Nuys and stuff, and I met all these porn stars because that's where all the porn stuff was at the time before you could do it anywhere for the internet.
Yep.
And like I didn't like socialize with them, but like I knew them, like I knew who they were, and they knew, and like we like just have little conversations in the shop, and because I knew some people who like had done that before and got involved in some politics about it, and they're like, oh yeah, that's a thing. It's a fascinating industry, and like I know we also know some people who went into editing and camera work for those.
I knew people in San Francisco that did that because there was a club right downtown called Mezzanine, and right across the street from that was like one of the biggest porn studios in California.
We lost a couple editors at Tech TV to fuckingmachines.com.
Yeah.
That was a problem.
That just shows you how much we were getting paid at Tech TV.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, and also like the thing about working crew for porn is there's always work.
Oh yeah.
Like that industry doesn't dry
stops.
up.
Yeah.
Pun intended.
That's a good one. All right, we should
see what we talk about when no games come out. Get on it,
It's not
industry.
our fault.
Let's
It's the gaming industry's fault. If they release some damn games, we wouldn't be talking about this right now. Nauseator Knight says, old LA is a weird place, just like old New York City. Yeah, I guess. LA, it's funny. Like what Silk Snake says, Hollywood is magical and whimsical. It's the greatest place on earth. I think a lot of people think that, but then you get here.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's being sarcastic there, but it's like, I think the Goo Goo Dolls said it best when they said Hollywood can fall in the ocean, man, because it's the ugliest place in the whole wide world. I love LA, but Hollywood is not what you think it is.
Yeah,
it's a bunch of
especially
tourist
once
trap
the sun
bullshit
goes down
and a bunch of weird warehouses.
Yeah.
Like it's.
I used to go to fun parties in those warehouses, but not anymore.
It's not what you think.
No, it's true. Yep. So anyway, that's all we got for our open for GameFace 383. We're about to get into the housekeeping here, and we have a ton of housekeeping today, which is good.
Oh, Cinetech Stellar Blade can't come soon enough, apparently. Well, as speaking to porn.
No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go.
We just keep it rolling here. All right, let's get on to our housekeeping. We do have a lot of housekeeping today, which is a good thing because we don't have as many games.
Yeah,
because
someone's got to clean
those.
those mattresses up.
So.
So.
Exactly. Our first topic in housekeeping for episode 383 is a little bit of an homage to a couple old Nintendo platforms. Yesterday was the last day that the online services for the Wii U and the 3DS were live. Matt,
That's how long we've been in LA. The DS didn't exist when we moved here.
It's crazy. The 3DS, you mean?
No, the DS.
Oh, the DS?
The DS came out November 2004.
Wow.
Because I remember Jason Chung and I went into a Best Buy and they had them. It was on launch day and they just had it. We're like, as long as we're here, let's get them.
Why
So
we might as well get one,
We
yeah.
didn't plan to get them, but we got them because they were there and available.
Yeah.
And like, no, yeah, that was
It's
the
insane.
we were still playing GBAs.
Yeah. Well, this set up an alarm for me. The fact that the 3DS and the Wii U online stuff was going away yesterday, because I'll be honest, like I searched around the internet, I could not find information anywhere, Matt, on whether you will be able to continue to update the firmware on the Wii U and the 3DS going forward.
You mean like plugging in an unopened one?
Or even, so I hadn't used my 3DS in years, so I went and got it.
As far as I know, that stuff still works.
Is it going to work still?
Well, they shut down the store like a year ago for them, and they still this is online play is gone. You can still get the Pokemon Bank, and it's like the online isn't disabled, and you still play peer to peer. I think.
Oh, you can.
It's just the servers that do the online play for like Mario Kart,
and whatever. Yeah.
But like, yeah, being able to download stuff you bought already should still work, as far as I know. And,
it does look like you're able to re-download games.
You can download your purchases. You can firmware should still work just fine.
Yeah,
that shouldn't be an issue.
Well, I was just
and as a matter of fact, if you go on, I turned the Wii U on a couple weeks ago, and all the Mii's came running
Piling
down
out.
just like they always do. I mean,
Well, I mean, this just happened yesterday, so they just shut it down.
But the online play has been gone been gone since yesterday. But like all the service stuff has been gone for a long time. Like the last time you could buy something on the Wii store or the Wii U store was like last July or something.
Yeah.
Well, I need to go in and check my Pokemon Bank because I think I forgot to renew that last August, and all my Pokemon might be gone.
Oh.
I've been carrying those forward since the original games.
Wow. So have I, some. But what I did is I just went and made sure that I didn't even dig out my Wii U. My Wii U is in its box, buried in the closet. I'm not tearing my whole closet apart to get it.
Mine's still hooked up.
But I did get
just in case I want to play Xenoblade X.
I did go grab my 3DS, and it did allow me to update the firmware, and it was way behind on firmware, so I'm glad I did that, but it does sound like you'll be able to go back.
Now, that stuff, so it's purely just online play that shut down.
Yeah.
And there's like things like, there's online features. One of the big problems that I saw people complaining about was that Dragon Quest 7, I think, has these like Chronicle capsules or something, and like you have to play, they're online downloadable, and you have to play to a certain point to unlock them and get them, but there's like 10 of them, and you can only have 7 downloaded at one time, so basically they had to pick which ones to keep forever, and 3 of them they will never be able to get again or something like that, or maybe the numbers are wrong. But you have a limited number you can have downloaded at any one time, and so you can't actually have all of them.
Weird.
Forever. So you basically had to pick the ones you wanted to give away, like never have again, because of this.
That doesn't make sense.
It's weird stuff. Like people had criticized, why can you only have this many of this downloaded? I mean, it's probably a memory limitation or something.
That'd be my guess.
But like, yeah, so maybe at some point do a version of that with everything complete for a modern system, Square. Just as long as you're not really doing anything of note. I don't. Yeah.
We're going to talk about another Square Enix game today, and I am starting to kind of wonder what it's up to at this point. What do you think the enduring opinion will be of the Wii U?
I don't think there will be much of one.
I'll say this. So watching the trailer that we just showed, first of all, if you're wondering
it's a weird blip.
Yeah.
Basically.
If you're wondering why that trailer's so blurry, it's because it's 720p.
Yeah.
The Wii U was 720p for the most part. All its promotional videos it released were 720p. That's just where it was at. But I will say this, watching that old trailer, it does show you hints at what was to come with the Switch. I almost feel like the Wii U, they needed it in the middle there to come to the conclusion of the Switch.
Maybe. I mean, they needed something to humble them after the Wii and kind of put them back on the track where they start making games again.
Yeah.
Because people forget that like the latter half of the Wii's lifespan was just garbage.
It was, yeah.
They,
a lot of gimmicks.
They really thought they could pull in grandma and grandpa forever
Yeah.
on those things, when really what happened was people bought that system as a Wii Sports box.
Yeah.
And never
played anything else
except maybe Wii Play.
Yeah.
And most people just bought that because it came with a controller.
Yeah.
Like that was their big mistake. I mean, leading that press conference in that era with Wii Music is like if you didn't know that they were completely out of touch at that point, I don't know what to tell you.
That was during the whole vitality sensor era where they're talking about that thing off and on, and
the Wii Fit and my body is ready and
all that.
Like,
yeah, lots of memes.
Gave us some good memes, but it was not a
not
good
great
time.
video games. Yeah,
I mean, I remember when Galaxy came out, and I'm like, they've got 100 million of these things out there, and only 10 million copies of this game sold. That's one of the best Mario games, one of the best games ever made.
Yeah.
And they only sold to 10% of the user base.
I know.
Nobody's buying shit. Like most of these are gathering dust right now.
Yeah.
There's the only explanation for that.
Yeah, I do
and
feel like...
And sure enough, the people that made the Switch a hit are the people they were neglecting during the Wii.
No, you're absolutely right. Yeah. I do think, though, that they almost needed this half step to understand what not to do with the tablet.
Yeah. What not to do with the tablet, and also who wasn't coming along.
Right. That's a good point.
Ride.
Yeah.
Like, it was like,
who are they leaving behind?
We got to repivot back to the core fans.
Yep.
And they did that for the Switch, and it worked like gangbusters.
Sure did.
So, you're probably right that it was a necessary lesson.
Expensive one.
A very expensive one, but they figured it out.
Yeah.
And to be, I think Iwata put on a master class of how to respond to a failure and
That's
a disaster in that era.
Yeah.
I mean, he did. I mean, it might have been a failure of leadership just overall to end up with that as your product.
Yeah.
But that you should study the pivot they made and Iwata made there as an example of how to turn things around when you've made a mistake as a corporation.
Yep.
It's a remarkable maneuver. And then they hit a home run.
Yeah, they sure did.
So I mean the Wii, I think whatever the successor to the Wii was going to be, it was going to be some kind of weird stumble one way. Even if it wasn't a Wii U, something was going to be. They were going to take the wrong lesson. They'd already taken the wrong lesson from the Wii.
They
it was
did,
very clear. And the Wii U was sort of the kind of the perfect expression of all of that. And I mean, some of that's also being informed by the rise of mobile gaming, the rise of tablets. I mean, you don't get the Wii gamepad without some of the outside forces, them trying to look at that and sort of outmaneuver that, and then you kind of and that was sort of the continued pivot from that was sort of how we got the Nintendo mobile stuff. So I think there are some outside forces being reacted to that cause at least the gamepad aspect to exist, but you can see the evolution of the gamepad idea into what the Switch was.
Oh yeah,
it became.
Well,
the Switch.
They did stuff with the Wii U gamepad that they never did with the Switch.
Yeah,
and they actually never did with the Wii U gamepad. Like this trailer that we're seeing, it's like all these cool little quirky things that it does. We never used any of this stuff.
No, it just wasn't robust enough for it.
I don't think it was powerful enough.
Powerful enough. The screen didn't look that good.
Yeah.
The resolution just wasn't.
That's
there.
why they put the little disclaimer at the bottom says screen simulated.
It was a big clunky. I mean, even just turning it on now, it's so awkward. It's such a big clunky junk.
It really is. It feels like a piece of junk. I agree. Yeah, I agree with you.
But I do kind of feel like I should track down another one because I feel like one day that gamepad is going to break and that system then becomes useless.
What about the 3DS? One thing I will say, pulling that sucker out that I hadn't used in a couple years, there was a few things that hit me. One was the 3D. I feel like we've forgotten about the fact that thing does 3D without 3D glasses. I still don't know how Nintendo did that, but it's pretty crazy.
It's similar to how those things you tilt and they move.
Yeah.
It's similar to that.
It's kind of that same tech.
Yeah.
You could go to CES around that era, and you go and you'd see TVs,
things
3D
like that,
TVs without the glasses, and they were this thick.
Yeah,
and
you gotta sit directly in front of it. Honestly, the best 3DS thing was when they added the new 3DS added the eye tracking.
Yeah.
That was remarkably good.
That's pretty crazy.
I mean, I never used the 3D because I just thought it was silly for the most part. But the fact that the difference between the original 3DS and how the eye tracking made the new 3DS allow you to see it from almost stay 3D for almost any angle, that's an amazing piece of amazing piece of trickery.
It is, and that hit me. And the other thing that hit me was how small the screen was. When I got my 3DS, I didn't need these. My vision was 20/20 razor sharp. Now, I think I need to bump up like another 0.25 with my readers, because I was playing that 3DS, man, and I was like, both screens were so small. The text was so tiny on that thing. I was just like, damn, I'd forgotten how small. I know, because I never bought another version of the 3DS. I got the OG launch version and never got another one.
The new 3DS is nice.
I know, I've heard, but I don't have one.
But it's, I have a few of them. No, I don't. Do I have an extra? I think I have an extra one, and then I have the Metroid DSi they put out, because I got when the Metroid 2 remake came out.
I remember you getting that,
which I never opened, but I just I keep it around in case I need one, because I have too many games for that system to not have that system at some point in some form.
But then it turned into this little nostalgia trip for me, and I started digging into my 3DS. I had to go find my SD card that had like all my stuff on it, because I had taken it out, so I wasn't using my 3DS. I did find it. And then I plugged that in, and man, just these games just started spilling onto and I got to do it. I went and messed around with Street Pass, and there's that whole puzzle thing where you'd run into somebody, and they'd give you a puzzle piece. Then you go back and you snap it into your puzzle. I had like 10 finished puzzles in there. Like
I have thousands and I mean, that was what E3 was for.
Yeah.
I mean, like you get more than you could hold.
Yeah.
There were periods at E3 when I would just sit. I'd go
just sit there and just accept.
Well, I just sit in the hallway between the halls, and I just sit there.
Watch them rolling in.
Like it was, I finished whole puzzles in like 20 minutes.
It's pretty crazy. It's all that stuff's gone. Like I found my little pack of AR augmented reality cards that you could set down, and it would do like crazy AR stuff. Like it's really crazy, that little 3DS, all the stuff that it could do. But the one thing that struck me was just how weak it was. So how long it takes to like load stuff up on the screen and flipping back and forth from one screen to another. Like, it was just an underpowered kit of hardware. But I spent a lot of time with that little sucker, man. I got a lot of use out of that thing. Yeah.
I mean, that was they always did good. The GBA and the 3DS are top tier handhelds.
Yeah.
And like, underpowered or not, like you can see why it was so dominant over the PSP and the Vita. It was just like anything you could want to play is in there.
So many games too, Matt, because the other thing for me is that, I've been a journalist the whole time. So Nintendo's always sending me codes for games. They've been doing it now for 20 years. My Nintendo library is just gigantic. And my 3DS library is freaking gigantic. Like, I don't even know where you can go to look online at all the games you own for the 3DS. To say, like, I've forgotten a lot of games that I own for it, and say I want to download them again. How do I even remember that I still own the thing to go and download it again?
You can go in and there's a...
Is there a place?
There is, like the store doesn't work anymore, but you can still look at your account on there, and like it'll say like re-download purchases or something like that.
Yeah.
I haven't done it in a long time.
But it was interesting to start digging back through that thing. It died, 2 years ago, technically? Like, they stopped releasing new games for it?
Stopped making games for it a couple, 2-3 years ago.
Yeah. It's crazy that it hung on for that long with the tech that was in that thing.
And the store shut down a year ago, so that's I mean, that's pretty much your official death. Is when you can't spend money, when they won't take your money anymore,
that's when
that's pretty much
it's all
the end.
over.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious what you guys remember about the 3DS and the Wii U. What your impressions of it are now that the dust has settled. And
I remember trying to play Xenoblade on it because it was like, an upgraded definitive edition.
Yeah.
After I played I played the Wii version, obviously.
Yeah.
But this was like, I don't have to play that. And then like, man, you couldn't tell what the hell you were looking at in that game. That was one of the few games that only ran on the new 3DS.
Yeah.
It needed the power of the new 3DS, which was not enough.
Swanland, thank you for Twitch Prime, brother.
Thank God we have a Switch version of that now.
Yeah. Vincent says there's a list of everything you've downloaded in the eShop on 3DS, and that's how you get stuff. I don't know where I was bumping around. I couldn't find it.
It's on the left side on the first screen.
Oh, it is?
It's the eShop, yeah.
Oh, you just go into the eShop, and there's
that's what he
a
said.
tab in there. Okay, I'll go back and look.
You can't buy anything still, but the eShop will load up.
Yeah. AJ the Legend Watson says, Shane, in a way, do you feel Nintendo is trying to keep games fun? I specifically asked off of the recent boss fight article. Yeah, so I wrote a big editorial that ran over the weekend on SIFTD, talking about how, most games are just dark and dingy and scary, and how there just aren't a lot of just fun games anymore. And I think that might be one of the issues we're having with growing the market. So AJ's asking me, is Nintendo kind of the exception? Because I didn't really mention Nintendo much in the editorial. And yeah, I would argue that Nintendo is doing a better job of providing content for a wider base, but Nintendo's missing that dark and dingy action RPG. So and I mentioned this in the editorial, that it is handling the one end of the spectrum, and the other two guys are handling the other end. We don't have a platform that really satisfies both. That was kind of my contention. So
on the flip side, today a game came out called Vroom Goes the Yellow Taxi, which is a 3D platformer where you play a yellow taxi.
I'm aware of that game, yeah.
You don't always need Nintendo for weird, bright fun.
Well, I also wrote in the editorial that indies handle that a lot, but what we've discovered...
Sega also used to do that before they became like fourth tier. You know, what else would you call Crazy Taxi?
No, you're right. But one thing I would say is that, like, I don't think that casuals care about indie games. Like, you're not going to get casual people to go to Steam during the summer sale or just go anywhere and start digging up indie games. I think that's a problem with Game Pass, honestly. I think a lot of casual people get Game Pass and they go there and they're like, this is like 90% indie games. I've never cared about those in the past. Should I care about them now?
Most of the people I know who are casuals who don't make a distinction.
Yeah.
The key is the cover interesting?
Right.
Is the image interesting? And the other thing, and I see this all the time when I see like the indie, some of the smaller indie games on, not just on Game Pass, but on like the upcoming like things. Mm-hmm. You gotta have a trailer.
Yeah, you're right.
When someone highlights that thing, they gotta see pictures. They gotta see an image of something. And I've even seen a couple where they don't even have screenshots. It's just the title. And it's like, if I don't even know what this game looks like, I'm not going to spend the time to download. And that's me. Like, like my friends who do just like are like, look at the thing, go. Look at the thing, go. If you don't immediately start playing that video and show them what this thing is, even if they're interested in the initial impression, you're going to lose them.
That goes back to the mantra.
That's the bigger problem.
That goes back to the mantra that we had at Game Trailers. So people would be like, why do you exist? We already have IGN, we already have GameSpot and all these gaming websites. Why does Game Trailers exist? And what we would always say is because they're called video games, not text games. Because we were video only. We had no written content at Game Trailers at all. And we were like, these guys are still living in the past with written content about video games. I'm like, we are a video site about video games. And that was kind of our tagline. And you're right. Like, people need to see these games in motion to really understand what they're about. If you're an indie guy, you definitely need a trailer there. Because some of the indie concepts are like, you try to explain them and people are like, what? But if you see it, instantly, you know.
I mean, it does happen. Like, I have a surprise, and it depends. Like, you got to prominently put this stuff where people are going to find it. Like, I've had a surprising number of people, like, ask me, like, what's this dredge thing? Mm-hmm. I'm like, how did you find dredge?
Yeah, how did they?
Because it bubbled to the top of the Game Pass thing.
Yeah,
like it's in the first line of games you look at that week or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how you get it up there. That's how you get people to give things a try. Because like, you know, my friends that are casual people don't know the difference between a AAA game and an indie game. Like they don't draw that distinction. Right?
Other than maybe price.
Or like, you know, obviously they know that Last of Us 2 looks a lot better than Dave the Diver.
Yeah.
But also like they don't know that Dave the Diver is by a giant corporation too. Like,
they don't. Yeah.
You know, all they care about really is that it's fun.
Mm-hmm. Getting them to try the fun, I think, is the stumbling block.
Yeah. And there are people, I'm sure, that just think of games as like the Uncharted model. This is like a narrative thing that has some things you play in between the cutscenes. Yeah. But for the most part, I think people will play whatever you put in front of them as long as it looks interesting to them.
Yeah.
And it's a matter of putting it in front of them.
I think the problem is that we aren't there to put the stuff in front of them. They need to find this stuff on their own, and I just don't think they have enough motivation to start digging around in like these dusty indie bins for games that they might like. I think casual people rely on stuff just materializing in front of them. I think a lot of them feel like if it's big enough and cool enough, I'll just find out about it on social media or whatever.
But no, I think most of the storefronts do that just fine. Except PlayStation.
But I don't think they're going to the storefronts is my point.
They are.
The casual folks?
100%.
That haven't bought a... Why would they haven't bought a console?
Oh, man, the people that own the console.
Oh, no, I'm talking about people who are trying... We're talking about trying to get new people into the market.
That's irrelevant to that. Yeah,
right. That's what I'm saying, though. Like, that's the challenge, is because the market's not growing anymore.
Well, yeah, because the challenge is over. Because the people who are going to buy the game systems this generation have done it. Like, now you've got to worry about next generation.
I think the people like us have done it. The people who like the dark fantasy action RPGs.
Tons of all the casual people that have really were going to jump in have jumped in.
There aren't that many, though. I mean, that means we're going from like 150 million to 50 million. That means we've lost like 2/3 of the audience in like a 3-year period.
I was already seeing that 150 million PlayStation 5s are projected by the end of the generation. It's a slow thing, but it's happening.
But you're just saying that isn't going to happen.
Yeah, but it's
like they're done. Yeah, no one else is going to buy it.
They're going to buy it when they buy it. Like, there's nothing you can do to lure them in faster, is what I'm saying. And that might not happen. I mean, you know, that projection may not be taking into account the lack of price drops this generation. Yeah. Like, they might be going off of, like, you know, models they're using from previous generations that assume that at some point these things are going to be half the price they launched at. I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, last gen, that never really happened.
It did a little bit.
Not much.
Not much, but they drop. I don't think you're going to see a cheap. I don't think what you're going to see what you could call a cheap PlayStation 5 ever.
Me either.
Not while the system is alive.
I agree 100%.
Which is probably the main problem, and it doesn't really matter how many indie games you put in front of somebody.
Yeah.
Like someone doesn't want to spend $500 on a game console, they're just not going to do that.
Yeah.
And I understand.
Yeah, I get it to an extent.
Like they're pricing themselves out to some degree, but like. That's also what the Switch exists for.
Yeah.
And it does seem to be reflecting that.
Yeah.
And we'll see what the Switch 2 costs. Because the Switch hasn't really dropped much either.
Nope.
It just started lower.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like we might look next generation. We might be looking at a bunch of consoles that price themselves out of the casual market in terms not like casual because every casual gamer friend I have owns a PlayStation 5 or a Switch.
Yeah.
That hasn't been an issue for them. But I think there's another there's when I worked in game stores back in the late 90s, one of the main places I worked was a independent store. It was owned by a record store that had an annex. And so we were like the concrete bunker behind the record store's parking lot.
Yeah.
It was great because we basically had our own little clubhouse.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
But our clientele was mostly low-income families who were interested in last-gen games.
Okay.
Last-gen systems. It was basically everything get traded in, and I would say 60 to 70% of our business, because this was 99, 98, 99, 2000. I'd say 65% of our business was Genesis, Super Nintendo, and N64. Mm-hmm. PlayStation 1 to some degree, but it was too expensive. It was too cutting edge, and the fact that the games were like $40 was a barrier.
You're not getting the 6-year-old stumbling in trying to pay for PlayStation 1 games. They wanted the old games that were cheaper.
They wanted the older games. They were. I mean, we had one kid that called us literally every day asking for Last Action Hero for the Genesis. We never got it in. Although one day one of our guys pretended we did, and then when he came in, he said, "Oh, we just sold it."
Oh, that's
which
evil.
is very mean. And then at some point later, he came in with his mother, and I was like, "Oh, we're in trouble now," because people were fucking with this kid a little bit. And she thanked us for being nice to him and being his friend. And I was like, "Oh my god, this kid's got troubles." We never did find a copy. After that, we're like, we should find a copy.
Yeah,
of
let's
this
just go on
fucking
eBay
game
and buy him one.
We never found one.
Really?
Like, it was very hard. It wasn't expensive theoretically, but it was very hard to find. Going on eBay and finding a game was not common.
No, you're right. It's easier now than it was.
And it was all people who wanted these older. They wanted to spend $5 on a video game, and obviously $5 in 1999 money is a lot more now. You're probably talking about like 15, 20.
Yeah, for sure.
That's always been kind of the sweet spot. And every once in a while, we get in a rare thing. If I got like Phantasy Star 2 or Chrono Trigger, I was going to price that sucker like an actual, because even then they were valuable.
Yeah.
And like we would get people asking why that game was so expensive, and I'm like, because it's
Go try to find it. And then you'll know.
Go find me a $5 copy of Final Fantasy 3 and let me know. It's like,
yeah, exactly.
But like, with the Neo Geo we had for a while.
Those have always been worth tons of money.
We sold that for thousands.
Yeah, I remember Jeff Gertzman had an incredible Neo Geo collection. Like literally, I think he told me he had spent like $8,000 of his own money.
I had an incredible Neo Geo collection. It was called the Neo Geo Collection on the Dreamcast.
Right.
And it had 5 games on it. It was really good. Yeah. But like that was as someone who was always like interested in the latest and greatest and reading those game magazines, it was interesting to like have contact with this other audience that was like, no, they play the older games because they can't
I don't care
afford
about
the current
the new stuff. Yeah.
And I think about those kids and their parents and those people that were our bread and butter clients, customers at the time, because I don't know how those people play games. I mean,
they're still playing PlayStation 4 right now.
If that,
or maybe, yeah.
Because that stuff's hard to find now too.
Yeah,
like the used game market is gone.
It is kind of gone. Yeah, because they're stopping now. Your GameStop's about to go away, and they're already chopping what they'll accept. They don't take everything like they used to.
When I went to get my haircut a month or two ago. I do that on Melrose, and I wandered down. I didn't wander down the street. I was parked like 3 blocks away because you can't.
Because that's what you have to do on Melrose. Yeah.
And I walked past this game store.
On Melrose?
There's a video game store on Melrose,
wow.
like right by the London Boots place.
By the way, Melrose usually is like this bougie place where like our wives and girlfriends go to buy clothes.
A lot of fashion stuff. A lot of stuff that turns out like the leases on Melrose for a retail store is 6 months.
you can
and
tell.
Sometimes 3 months because you don't know how long these things are going to last.
They don't last very long.
And it was this store, and it was like it had a note on the door that said back in 10 minutes, and I was like, I didn't know there was a video game store. I mean, I thought I knew every video game store. And I waited, or I went down the street and like looked at some other stuff and came back and it was open. I went into this guy, the guy was there. It was a pretty well stocked store of like just about every generation.
Okay.
A lot of recent stuff, but goes back to Genesis, Super Nintendo stuff. Some rare stuff. There was some priced accordingly. It's not there weren't any bargains.
He wasn't
here.
a fool. Yeah.
No, he knew what he had. Big Pokemon section. Like if you're a Pokemon collector, he had just about everything you can think of.
Wow.
And I talked to him for a bit. He had one of those full-size Fallout power armor statues.
I wonder if he got it from game trailers, because there is a big
I asked
dust
him
up over what happened to ours.
I asked him about it because we had one at X-Play too, and we gave it to Meltdown Comics when we shut down. The gun was broken off; it had to be fixed. But we gave it to Meltdown Comics, and Meltdown Comics shut down years later, and we don't know what happened to it after that. So I asked where he got it, if it was ours.
Yeah.
And he said he didn't know. He got it from a junk store, basically down in Orange County. He found it.
It's possible
like
it was
it wasn't
trailers.
ours because the gun wasn't broken. So if it could have been yours, I don't know how many of those there possibly could have been in the LA area that would end up in junk stores.
20 or 30, maybe.
No, I don't think
maybe not that many. Yeah,
I think
maybe
only,
like 5.
I think they only made 20 or 30.
Yeah, you may be right.
So my guess is it was probably either the game trailers one or the one they used to have for the booth.
That's possible.
Because they probably would have cleared the storage out at some point, and that would have coincided.
And the timing kind of worked out with E3 going away.
Because it turned out that store had been there for 3 years. Which I'm like, how I never saw it before, I have no idea. And how it's still there, I have no idea.
It may be just a money laundering scheme.
You never know. There was a game store. You remember?
A lot of them are.
Well, you remember the one that was like a boutique-y one?
Yeah. Anvil or whatever it was.
Acme.
Acme.
It's called Acme.
Yeah.
And like we shot there several times, and
they were
a front for like some shady.
They're also doing shady like piracy stuff out of the back.
Piracy stuff out of the back. There was some rumor because we showed up to shoot there once, and the cops were raiding the place, and they're like, "You work here?" We're like, "Nope, we're just passing through." Right. Because for a long time we're like, how does that place stay open? Because it was a huge,
nobody buys games.
It was actually the place Golden Apple was.
Yeah,
for a
it was
long
really
time
nice
after that.
too.
It was a huge location,
yeah.
And like right prime Melrose and La Brea. Like everyone's like, how is this functioning? It wasn't.
And it wasn't.
That was the answer. That was the answer.
All right, we got to move on. Even for today's episode, we got to move on. But anyway, I do want to play Taps for the Wii U and the 3DS because we are at the end of their lives. This is it. I've been waiting to have Taps on the TriCaster for years. I'm going to play it for the Wii U and the 3DS. So anyway, rest in peace, Wii U and 3DS. I never really got that much entertainment out of the Wii U, but the 3DS, I absolutely did.
You're missing the chat.
Oh, what'd you say? Oh, you need to scroll down, you mean?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Oh, wow, there's a lot of chat there. Oh, Lore Ondos. First time ever chatting on GameFace. Welcome to the crew. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern. Please come back. And he or she wrote... you got all of handheld PCs now, which is true. We're going to talk about one here in a minute, actually. Amazing how popular the Steam Deck has been, considering it has only been officially sold on the Steam Store. Yeah, I mean, but the Steam Store is freaking gigantic, so...
the Steam Store is big enough that it has to encompass a fair amount of casual traffic as well.
Yeah. I mean, it's the PC game store, pretty much. So anyway, rest in peace to the Wii U and the 3DS. Next up, Fallout TV series, Matt. This series has been getting all kinds of positive vibes from people. People who have checked it out so far have basically gushed over it. Are you confident that this show is going to be good? It's on Amazon Prime. They've bumped up the debut 3 times now. It is launching tomorrow at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on Amazon Prime, and they are putting up all the episodes at once. So we will be talking about it, obviously, in next week's episode of GameFace. But are you confident that this show's going to be good?
No.
Me either.
I mean, look, Fallout would be pretty easy to make a show out of, really. Fallout is mostly vibes.
Yeah.
Like, there's no canon story you really need to stick to.
Yeah.
Bethesda didn't even stick to the canon story when they made 3 and 4.
Plus, Todd Howard's there. He's supposedly shepherding the whole project.
I get it, but it's like you really don't... It only really needs to be tonally consistent.
Yeah.
Like, you don't... There is
that part, it seems like they've hit already in the trailers I've seen.
Judging from the trailers, they basically nailed it.
Yeah.
I don't really care.
Are you gonna watch it?
I guess because you're probably gonna talk about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about it next week.
You know, I'm not a. Honestly, I don't watch a lot of TV shows anymore.
I don't either, really.
I don't care. I don't care for the time commitment.
Yeah.
It's just like I prefer movies, and I always have preferred movies, just in the sense of like, tell me a story in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like
and then I can go on my way.
And like the Netflix era and the streaming era has really broken me because it's just like. It just takes everybody forever because they got to stretch to fill the number of episodes the streamer wants them to make. And so it goes back to the Marvel Netflix shows to me, where it's like, yeah, Daredevil had some great moments, but it was 8 episodes of story stretched to 13.
Yeah.
And I got really tired of the pacing in these things, which I know is a stupid complaint. The pacing is always one of the... as soon as someone says the pacing was bad, you're like, okay, I don't need to listen to you.
Yeah.
But like, there's just, like, I just get tired of the whole drawn out shit. It happens all the time in these streaming. My favorite criticism of streaming shows was a tweet. I don't remember who did it, but it's basically like back in the day, if there was a show called Surf Dracula, every episode, every week, you'd see that fool surfing every episode. But in the streaming era, it would take him the whole season to like get his surfboard, and at the end, the final 5 minutes of the final series finale would be him surfing.
Right.
Yeah. And then my addition to that is like, okay, and then season 2, the first scene, he wipes out, and then he has to spend the entire second season regaining the confidence to surf again. Like that's what streaming shows are to me.
You're right.
It's like, just
that's pretty
do
accurate.
the thing.
Yeah.
Like, what do you do?
I hear you.
I
don't watch a lot of TV shows either. I haven't had Netflix now for months and months. I don't miss it. Like, I have Amazon Prime because I just have Amazon Prime for shipping. Mm-hmm. So I do watch stuff on Amazon Prime, but I have none of the other streaming services, Matt. And I never watch television anymore. I basically just watch sports and play video games. And that's pretty much it. I'll go watch a movie once a year, maybe in a theater, and I'll watch 10 films a year on my TV, something like that.
I watch movies in the theater all the time.
Right.
At least once a week, usually.
Yeah.
But again, I like that movies are done in 2 hours.
Yeah.
Like, if you want to take up 13 hours of my time, you better be real fucking good.
I hear you.
And very few things are that.
Oh, I was actually surprised, Matt. I did watch the second season of Invincible. I didn't think it was as crazy as the first season.
Oh, what they covered this season is not super.
Oh, you're
crazy.
saying something's coming after this.
I'm saying 40,000 things are coming.
Oh, okay,
after
gotcha.
That. Like, I could just tell you things from the final story arcs of that show, and you'd be like,
no way.
I have no idea how we're going to get to that.
Got
not.
Oh, I thought you were saying the second season was going to blow my mind.
No. If they get to adapt the whole story, it will blow you away.
Okay.
You have no. I
like the first season better of Invincible.
The first season is stronger. The second season is doing
still
a lot
good.
That section of the story is a lot of setup, but you're getting there. You're going to start seeing where they're going. I mean, who knows? I mean, 3 years from now when they make 8 more episodes or something. I don't know.
I
don't know why it's taken so long.
It seems like it takes a long time.
Splitting this season up was a mistake.
Yeah.
Huge, because no one talked about it.
Yeah, it loses its.
It was huge buzz when it first showed up, and then they split, and like when that came back, very few people were talking about it.
Yeah, no one was talking about it.
You need to make them more faster and put them out in one 8-week chunk if you're going to do that.
I couldn't believe the season finale was the season finale.
Yeah, it's a weird
ended,
stopping
and I'm
place.
like, I'm waiting. I'm like, okay, there is no next episode.
No, it's a weird stopping point.
Yeah, it was. I still enjoyed it, but
Invincible's great. The comic is amazing. It's a very accurate. Although
representation.
There's a couple of things in the new season that I don't understand the way, like when he beats that one guy and says, "I thought you were stronger." In the comics,
isn't he in like an alternate reality when that happens?
It's an alternate reality. Yeah. But he says in the show he does that and he's like, I thought you were stronger. Like there's a thing like that. In the comics, he's horrified. Like he didn't mean to hurt him that badly. And like the shot is
I got that vibe a little bit
face
from the show.
But like the way the bubble is like shaky, it's clearly supposed to be read as like I thought you were stronger.
Yeah,
I didn't realize I was going to kill you.
That's the beauty of comics.
But it's just
how something's displayed.
There's a couple lines in there that I've read that series several times, and there's a couple lines there I'm like, oh boy, is that not how I would have read that line?
Yeah.
As that.
Why does his costume suck? Is there eventually some thing that comes to light?
No, he switches costumes at some point.
Oh, he does. I hate his costume. It's like the dumbest costume. Worse.
Well, he's got. That's kind of. I mean, here's the thing.
He's got this dumb bug eyes and like.
No one really. It's made fun of a couple times. No one really understands what. I mean, why does he have the Image logo on his chest? Yeah. I mean, it's supposed to be invincible, but it's like that's the Image eye.
Yeah.
It's weird.
Yeah.
There's the Spider-Man guy shows up in this season. So in the comics, that's actually There's an actual crossover with Spider-Man, and there's a whole thing where he meets the Avengers and he's like, okay, based on this, on Spider-Man's base, he says, Captain America's like, you're Flag Man, and you're Hammer Man, and you're Green Man, and then Luke Cage is back there and he's like, and you're Black Man? And like Luke Cage's like, Black Man? It's like what? And
That's
I'm
funny.
Like, bro, you work on a team with a robot named Robot. Like, what are you talking about?
That's right. Yeah.
It's just weird. But like, I mean, the thing that people are like, oh, this is a much better deconstruction of Superman, better than like what people claim is this. But like the real answer is it's a reconstruction of the Superman idea, and you're just not there yet.
Yeah.
And as you see how they do that, it's pretty brilliant. Like you have no idea where they're going with the father or the mother or any of that. It gets so fucking weird. It gets so strange because it all gets very cosmic and alien and timeliney and alternate timeliney and versions of things and versions of that, and it's violent, like planetary violence shit. Like, I mean, it's real good.
Okay. I see people recommending the TV show Shogun in chat. By the way, one of the stars of Shogun is a former video editor at Game Trailers named Derek Mio, M-I-O. Since he left Game Trailers, he has turned into a huge actor. Any TV show that features an Asian cast, he's in it. Literally every single one of the last 7 years, he's been in all of them. And he has one of the lead roles in Shogun. He also does stand-up comedy. But Google him if you're that interested. His name's Derek Mio. And he literally was just a video editor at Game Trailers. And we had a lot of video editors there who were aspiring actors, who were working there to pay the bills while they, on their spare time, are going out to auditions and things like that. We had another guy who ended up on CSI Las Vegas, I think. There was another video editor. So we had like a little bit of a thing going on there. But anyway, Derek Mio is awesome. He's a really good dude. Try to support anything he's in if you care. So, just a little bit of a tangent there about TV shows.
One of our hosts went on to be Psylocke.
That's right. That's true. Yep. And we never would have guessed that at the time, that's for sure. Next up, another update on Suicide Squad. I think a lot of people thought maybe DLC might bail this game out and reinvigorate interest in it and maybe have people give it a second chance, but
it turned out they had no ideas.
And
like the whole plan for what the seasons are going to be is terrible.
It's
like, I mean, even aside from how bad this Joker is, that was your idea? Like, make everybody start over and grind for 30 levels again? Like, what?
I mean, if the Joker is a template that there's going to follow going forward, there's really, I mean, we're watching this trailer here and they try to make it seem like there's a bunch of narrative around. There really isn't.
No, there's nothing.
It's like, I feel like there's a little bit of bait and switch going on here. I feel like these trailers give you the idea that there's some story-based content around Joker that's going to be in it, and there really isn't. He's just kind of
he's just a playable
he's
character.
He's just a new playable character that you run into. Like, I don't know what happened with this game. It's just kind of been a disaster from the beginning till now. It's just really a shame.
Yeah, more and more there's sort of this thing of like, oh, like you want to chalk it up to like some kind of failed execution or rush something, but like more and more it really feels like these were terrible ideas from the start.
That nobody said no to.
Yeah, how did that happen? You know, it's the Rise of Skywalker thing. It's like how did this get through the number of pairs of eyes it had to get through and then come out?
Yeah.
How was there no one in that chain that was like, hey, stop. wait, look at what's happening here.
Because these projects, they're like the Titanic, man. Like, they have these huge marketing budgets that are allocated 18 months in advance.
But I continue to, I bang this drum forever, but it's like, I could have told you in the pitch meeting this was a bad idea.
Yeah. Again, the consulting agency could have saved them so much time and money.
I told you, I said it when they teased the Suicide Squad game at the end of Origins.
Yeah, you're right.
But it wasn't even Rocksteady.
Yeah.
I was like, no, nobody wants a Suicide Squad game. That's not a good idea.
That has definitely been proven, I think, through this, that Suicide Squad as an IP just doesn't hit. People just don't care. And I don't blame them. I don't care either about Suicide Squad. I just don't. Now they're like, okay, we need to make this an Arkham thing because obviously the Suicide Squad can't hold the water on its own. So,
yeah, it could not possibly be more obvious that this was not meant to be Arkham continuity.
Exactly.
That's why I think this Joker is from another universe.
He looks and sounds like it.
Yeah, well, because he would fit this universe, right?
Yeah.
Like I think originally this was just, I'm like, oh, we'll just make this Joker from another universe. The Joker in the Arkhamverse is dead. And that's not a thing about like, oh, I do hate the way they end Batman in this, not because of Kevin Conroy, but because like that's a very weird way to kill Batman.
Yeah.
And all of them, really.
Yeah.
And it's just like the very concept is something you do with a one-off universe.
Yeah.
It's not something you do with an established universe.
Yeah.
Because they never established any of these characters in that universe before this game, which is a way more interesting story than the story this game tells. And then the online stuff, you could get away with it if the online stuff was compelling in some way, but it's just not. It's not. And like, meanwhile, you've got Helldivers 2 showing you how the fucking game is played in that regard. Like the players eliminated one of the enemy factions this week. The automatons are gone, and no one knows. Like, but they're not gone. Like, something's gonna happen. Like, something's, and there's a third faction waiting out there. Like Helldivers 2 is one of the most exciting kind of development things I've even not played.
Because it activates the entire community.
Yeah.
That's the difference. They're not trying to activate individual players. They're like, no, let's make decisions that will get everybody on the same team and everybody pulling the rope in the same direction.
And I think one of the keys there is they've also got, and part of it's the game
even
design.
if you're fighting each other and killing each other in the midst of it all, or whatever.
Even part of it's the game design and how it works. But they basically have a game master. They have a guy who's basically sitting there all day
pulling the levers,
pulling levers to fuck with people, and like, that's great. And it makes
it's like the Wizard of Oz.
It makes headlines. It makes it interesting to follow. And they're like, we're not going to tell you the roadmap. We're not telling you what's going to happen. Just things are going to constantly happen. And I think how Helldivers 2 is running its online like roadmap is going to change how people.
It's a good template to follow.
It is.
I agree.
But like, the trick is, you got to be skilled.
I just wish I cared about the base game. I mean,
the phenomenon of that game. I mean, it's a little too grindy for me to keep going on it. I mean, I have played more of it, but it's just like, okay, like I don't have the attention span or the time to really focus on it outside of like reading up on what happened today, kind of thing. But like, I mean, I've seen people like, this is one of my favorite games of all time because of how that is all unfolding. Like, it's there, and they're right. Like, there is nothing else to compare that to. Like, there is no other game that has.
Well, there was back in the Xbox 360 era, but nobody paid any attention to that and really emulated that concept until now. Really, it's kind of crazy when you think about it.
Are you talking about Chrome Hounds?
Yeah,
Chrome Hounds is probably the closest comparison.
Yeah, it had that whole global conflict thing going on where you go online and fight for the one side or the other side.
And to be clear, Helldivers 1 was the same way as this.
Yeah, see, I never played Helldivers 1.
It just didn't catch on because it was a Diablo kind of three-quarters twin-stick shooter, and this is a third-person over-the-shoulder shooter, which is a more universal appeal.
More accepted.
So yeah, I mean, I would never have predicted it, but they struck gold with this thing.
It's a good template to follow, but it's too late for Suicide Squad.
No, Suicide Squad doesn't have the agility. Suicide Squad doesn't have the framework to do anything like that.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not an interesting enough idea.
Yep. Let's move on. We're going to talk next about a big surprise that came out this week that, I'll be honest with you, Matt, this is one of these rumors that I don't know if I believe it or not, but some very reliable sources shared this week that a new Prince of Persia game is coming from the team that developed Dead Cells, and it's launching this year. Matt, I don't know if you've seen or not.
2 Prince of Persias in 1 year?
After not getting one for like 8 years?
They're still not doing the Sands of Time remake?
And let's be honest, the one we're seeing right now tanked. It did not. The Lost Crown did not sell well at all.
It was good, though.
It is good. And it just shows you not every good or great game is going to result in sales. And Prince of Persia: The Lost Crown is one of them. It's a 2.5D hack and slash Metroidvania style game. It does feel a little bit like that genre has lost some of its appeal. The Metroidvania, I don't know if it's just because the market's been flooded with them and people are losing interest.
There have been a lot of them, but also like they were never a mainstream thing.
Tales of Kenzera, I'm now worried about how that game's going to do financially as well. Because if Prince of Persia couldn't do well.
Prince of Persia doesn't have any pull anymore.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously a new IP doesn't either, although maybe more.
But I think that one has more pull because it has a cultural interest to it, and it has a unique look, and it has a unique mythology behind it, and it has kind of not a rags to riches, but it's like the story behind the guy who made it is interesting. You got a lot of angles to come at that, whereas like this one in the end is just like it's
first
another
Prince of Persia game in 8
Prince
years.
Of Persia game, or it's the first Prince of Persia game in forever, and everyone's like, well, who cares about Prince of Persia?
What's that? Yeah.
Is that the Prince of Persia? No, it's a guy. He's in Persia. There's a prince. Is he the Prince of Persia? I don't know.
Yeah, well, I don't think there really isn't a definitive one, right?
I think the guy who's your friend is supposed to be a pre-Prince of Persia, or maybe you're a secret Prince of Persia. I didn't finish it. I don't know.
Yeah. I wonder if people looked at this game and were like, that looks like an indie game. I'm not going to give you $60 for it.
I mean, was it $60?
I think it's maybe 50.
It was
actually.
50.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still pretty high.
For a game that looks like this. Even though I would argue this game was probably worth the $50.
Oh, for sure.
But just looking at it, people may have looked at it and been like, that looks like games I usually pay $20 or $30 for.
And the core audience has like that skepticism with Ubisoft. I saw people today with the Outlaws trailer talking about what a massive downgrade the visuals were from the previous trailer. I'm like, they look exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like people just don't like Ubisoft.
Or expectations change from when they first show it. Maybe they see a couple other games like, oh, games should look better than that now.
But they don't. Like nothing looks better than that.
You're right.
I don't know. Like, I mean, Dead Cells guys are a good. I mean, if I was going to pick them to make an existing IP, it would probably be either Prince of Persia or Castlevania.
Yeah, it's a good match.
And clearly, Konami's not paying for a Castlevania game, so might as well. I mean, if they're going to get no skin off theirs.
I wouldn't be surprised if this game from the Dead Cells crew just gets delayed into next year. It's just hard for me to fathom that after the first Prince of Persia game did not do well.
The rumor is that they're revealing it tomorrow.
Really?
So,
interesting. Okay. Well, I enjoyed The Lost Crown, and I'll probably will ultimately enjoy that other Prince of Persia from the Dead Cells team as well. It just doesn't feel like it's an IP or a franchise that people are really frothing with demand for at this point. So,
well, you got to put something on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, Ubisoft has had problems with that, putting something on the schedule. It hasn't had a lot of game releases here for the last couple of years. It does need to sort of change and start getting more games out. That's for sure. I know when in a recent episode of Pactor Factor, someone asked him about Ubisoft, and he's just like, they're just not putting out games anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, they used to put out like 10 or 12 a year, and now they're putting out like 2 or 3. And that's why their stock is like in the toilet right now as well. So I don't know if if 2 Prince of Persia games in 10 months is going to turn its financials around. It doesn't sound like
That's what they got.
Yeah.
I mean, they used to be an 800-pound gorilla, and they're just not anymore.
Yeah, it's been drastic watching Ubisoft sort of fade.
Remember when people were just like, I don't know how anybody makes headway against Ubisoft when they're just dominating the release schedule.
And everyone's imitating their design.
Their own worst enemy.
And now, it's funny. It's funny how the industry changes. Like
they were not ready for what happened with Breakpoint.
No.
That basically, it's like it feels like
that threw everything out of sequence.
It's like it feels like an athlete that has lost their confidence after a bad game.
Yeah, hockey's like that. Teams can lose their confidence.
I was thinking of pitchers.
Yeah, that's true as well. Yep, they're confident that they can hit that spot on the edge of the plate anymore, so they just don't throw it. And, yeah, it matters for sure. So anyway, I hope you all like Prince of Persia. Yeah. Everybody's getting Tommy John now. Yeah. It's like no one can pitch more than 2 years without needing Tommy John surgery in baseball now. It's crazy. I'm not even a big baseball fan, but I've picked up on that.
No, you see some crazy. I saw a video yesterday. It was like a college league guy, I think, and he was pitching. He pitched sidearm, and the video was from behind the backstop, and you could hear his arm snap. Ugh. And everyone knows, because everyone who plays baseball knows what that is, and everyone on the field goes, like freaks out.
Well, it's like when I was a kid playing Little League, they told me to never throw curves. I was a pitcher and a shortstop. They're like, don't throw curves, don't throw anything that's going to twist your arm. Just throw fastballs and changeups, and that's it. That's not the way it is anymore. If you watch like the College World Series, they're all throwing sliders, curveballs, knuckleballs.
And if you haven't thrown sidearms since basically you were in Little League, your arm's not.
They're gonna rip your arm.
Your arm's not built for it. Hasn't been stretched that way.
Yep.
That's the thing about baseball is eventually everything happens so often that eventually you're gonna see everything.
Swear and tear.
Yeah. And sometimes they're good things. Yesterday I saw a video of a Little League kid, and he's at the bat. And a foul ball comes over the backstop from a game next door, on the field, and he swings and he hits both the pitch and the foul ball.
No way!
At the same time, and they both go. I was like,
it's insane.
Statistically,
that's like 1 in a trillion.
Yeah, maybe the only time that's ever happened in the history of the game.
That's nuts.
But there it is on video.
That's crazy. So anyway, I hope you guys love Prince of Persia, because you're going to be getting a lot more of it. If you missed it over the last 8 or whatever years, you're going to get your fill now. Next up, there was a study performed by the Trinity College of Dublin, and they have determined that people who play video games can see more frames per second than the average human being.
Well, that's not 100% true.
Well,
because tons of people who play video games cannot see the difference between 30 and 60.
Yeah, that's a good point.
That was one of the big talking points around this article was people who the 60 frames per second snobs were basically like, okay, maybe you guys aren't lying that you can't see the difference.
Yeah.
And some people are like, yeah, I don't see the difference between the two, which is crazy to me. Like I can tell you the difference between 60 and 120, but you either can or you can't. There are people who see the world at a much slower frame rate than everyone else.
Which is scary, kind of.
Explain some things about driving.
Well, basically what the Trinity College of Dublin said is that, I think they studied 5,000 people or whatever, and they said consistently that people who play a lot of video games could see more frames per second. Also, they said people who played sports like tennis and racquetball could see more frames per second.
It's just what your eyes are trained to do.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of crazy that we've been training our eyes to see more frames all these years.
What I would love to see is a study that goes like more in depth about the age of everybody and what they grew up playing.
Yeah.
Because I have a theory. Because I've noticed the people that know 60 frames a second tend to be younger and our age.
Yeah.
And the thing that a lot of people don't realize is most 2D games were 60.
Yeah, they were.
They refreshed it as 60. Old arcade games, a lot of NES games.
Yeah.
You didn't start getting into the low, chunky frame rates until 3D came along.
Yeah.
And I'm curious if the people who have trouble picking up on higher frame rates versus lower frame rates are people who grew up playing the N64 and the PS1.
It's possible.
And I don't mean that as a joke
or
an insult.
I know.
I mean, like, if we grew up doing high frame rate. Yeah, people younger than that grew up with higher frame rates, like steady frame rates.
Yeah.
And, like, is there this little generation gap where, like, if you grew up playing N64 games, you were playing 18 frames a second shit and just, like, had to make do.
Yeah.
And so you don't make a distinction.
You also got to remember that we were maybe the first people ever to ever care, maybe even say the phrase frame rate. Like, people who were gamers back in the PlayStation 1 and N64 era, like, we didn't talk about frame rates, like, before that, like with 2D games.
Unless you were in the film and TV industry, there wasn't really
there's no reason
wasn't really anything to say about it.
So we were like the first people to ever even discuss something like this. Obviously, we're the first people to really suffer low frame rates. If you played Rare's N64 games, you have been through it. Like,
I mean, go play Ocarina of Time again.
No, you're right. Yeah,
that's a 20 frame a second game.
I mean, it gets slower than that at times, actually.
Oh, yeah. But, like, on average, I bet the average frame rate of Ocarina is about 20, 22.
Yep, I was going to say 22 frames. Yep, that's about what I would guess as well. So maybe...
I mean, I went back and tried to get Jet Force Gemini. I played Jet Force Gemini ton. I love that game.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I can't
it's almost unplayable.
do this anymore.
Yeah.
It
starts to make me a little queasy now.
Doesn't make me queasy, but it just makes me mad.
Yeah.
I'm just like, I can't react to things if you don't show it to me.
So is seeing more frames, is that like a superpower or is it a curse?
I don't think it really matters. Because like, I think it depends how, like, like, in your own head you get. Because it's like, I can play a steady frame rate, whatever it is.
Yeah.
I
don't mind 30 frames if it's
like
locked.
I played 100 hours or something of 60 plus frame Starfield, but when I switched over the console in the living room with the same save, it went down to 30. And at first I was like, "Whoa, I guess that's different." And then like 10 minutes later, it was fine.
Yeah.
Like it's as long as it's not stuttering, I don't care.
Yep. If it's locked at 30, I'm totally cool with it. I have no problem.
And usually, like, I will usually default to performance just because, like, for the most part, like, I'd rather have it running smoothly. Because, like, I don't actually. I always default to quality. I'll try quality, but if quality stutters at all, I will switch back to performance.
I played a game that we're going to talk about here in a minute where it stutters on quality.
I can guess which one that is.
Yep. So anyway, we are superhumans. We are superheroes. We can see things other people can't see, except it's completely worthless. That's the sad part. Lorondo says a family member 17 years older than me had motion smoothing turned on, could not notice it. It was yeah. Well, that's
the other thing. It's like not being able to tell because it works both ways.
Yeah.
Like it's not just like, oh, I can't tell this thing is a bad low frame rate. Also, they can't tell that something's a higher frame. And I've seen that with, like, when we started doing our Twin Peaks marathon several years ago. My friend at his house, and he had a 4K projector and it was brand new. He'd never shown anything on it yet. And we started watching the first episode, and like 4 of us were like, "Motion smoothing's on. Turn it. You got to turn it." And he hates motion. He would not have left it on intentionally. He just didn't realize it was another setting he had to go into. And like it was like 30 of us in the room. 5 of us were like, "You got to turn that off right now. Go back and replay the first scene." Like we're not going. He's like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna do it." And everyone else was like, "What were you talking about?" No one could see. And I'm like, "I don't know how you can't see the difference to that."
It's all smeared and blurry. Yeah.
It's it's too sharp.
Oh really? I always found that it like smeared edges.
No. Like the motion smoothing is too. It's because it looks like a soap opera. It's interpolating frames. It's adding information where there is no information.
There, and it's creating fake information.
Yeah. And like it's just it's.
trash. Most people hate it.
It's when people talk about like how they like some people get like feel weird or like angry or upset when they see like sunflower pod seeds or like the little holes in things. Yeah. Trichophobia or whatever.
Yeah.
That's how I feel when I see motion smoothing.
Yeah.
I'm just like, get out! I want to rip it off the screen.
Okay, let's move on to our next topic. We're actually back on Ubisoft, kind of. Ubisoft announced this week, Matt, that it is doing its annual big press event. I can't call it E3 press conference anymore. Once again on June 10th. So we already got confirmation that Microsoft is doing its thing on the Sunday like it always did. Mm-hmm. Ubisoft is now doing its thing on the same day. It looks like, even though E3 is gone, we're still going to have E3 this year.
Well, like I've always said, that's a good time to sort of lay out the second half of your year.
Yeah.
So it's a reason E3 was there to begin with.
I'm sure Jeff Keighley is just... He's got to be very happy. Because he literally was just handed E3 on a platter.
Sorta. I don't think he's going to get that kind of numbers, and he's not going to get participation from certain companies.
Yeah.
It'd be fine. Whatever.
I mean, I'm excited, honestly.
He needs to step the production value up of the Summer Games thing. I mean, it's just not on par with the Game Awards.
No, I agree.
It may never be, just because it's not ever going to
I don't think it's going to generate the kind of money that the Game Awards will. So, I understand why the budget's a little smaller there. But, I mean, he basically was just handed the world's biggest video game convention on a silver platter. And he had a little bit of something to do with it getting there.
Well, there's no convention.
Yeah, there's no con part of it. Yeah,
who knows?
He's going to get all the good parts of it without having to worry about the bad parts.
Sorta. He's not going to get in-person stuff.
Yeah.
No one's going to fly. I mean,
he still has people on his stage. They show up.
Some, but it's not going to be E3.
Yeah,
it's not going to be that thing where you get that windfall of everybody being in town.
Right.
That even Game Awards has now.
Yeah.
I'm sure he'll try to build it into that, but I don't see it happening. Like the amount of money it costs to fly these people out and put them up in downtown LA is just not. There's no way.
He wouldn't pay for that.
No. I mean the companies won't pay for that.
Yeah.
Like I don't see it. They'll have trailers. There'll be stuff to see, but like this is always, I think, going to be a little oasis of news in a summer drought.
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited because, again, it's June. There usually aren't a lot of video game releases that month. Having E3, Summer Game Fest, whatever the hell you want to call it, helps us as a show. It helps the industry in general keep the news cycle going. So I'm excited, and I'm glad that it's happening, and it's not that whole thing just isn't going away. That Keighley's going to fill that void, but boy, he really stepped into an advantageous situation here. So congrats to him, and I'm very happy that Summer Game Fest is going to happen during that same sort of second week of
Might have
June.
A game or two anybody cares about this time.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm pretty excited about it. Congrats to Jeff Keighley. It's all worked out just perfect for him, like it always does. I've never seen somebody so charmed in my life where everything just turns up gold every time.
When your dad owns IMAX.
It really is crazy.
It works out pretty well for you,
It does, yeah. You have all those resources that you can pull from to make things happen. It's just a perfect example of how the rich just get richer. Because it's like once you have the money, you have all the resources to keep making more money. So, again, congrats to him and congrats to us. I mean, it's good for all of us. There's still going to be some semblance of an E3 happening every June. At least it looks that way right now.
As Liz Taylor and James Dean say in Giant, money isn't everything, Jet. Not when you got it.
Yep, exactly. Yep. Next up, so we were wondering what was going on with the remake of Silent Hill 2. It was supposed to come out this year.
Were we?
Well, yeah, because I think up until, yesterday, we thought that maybe it wasn't going to come out this year.
I thought it was coming this year, probably, but I wasn't going to bet on it.
Well,
who knows?
We only have 2 trailers. We have the
Bloober team is usually pretty reliable.
They usually hit their release dates. Yeah, they do. But we hadn't seen any gameplay from the game. We saw a gameplay trailer. Everybody hated the gameplay trailer, and that's all we have from it. They're still saying this year, and as it turns out, it looks like it is in fact coming this year. The ESRB just rated the game. When that happens, the chances of a game not coming out within the next 6 months are slim to none. Once you send it to the ESRB, the game's pretty much completed, in your opinion. You may have to make some tweaks based upon what the ESRB says. You may have to squash some final bugs.
But the content is not changing, really.
And so it looks like the Silent Hill 2 remake is, in fact, going to make it this year, and it's going to make it for my fantasy team, which is great, because I'm running out of games real fast with my fantasy team right now. So it's good to see that this one might come out, even though who knows what kind of a score it's going to get. But again, Silent Hill 2 Remake, rated by the ESRB. My guess is it'll probably make it October, November time, something like that.
I mean, it
Halloween
feels
is a
like
good
a good
time.
Halloween release, but who God knows. I mean, if they're rating it now, that could be a July.
Yeah.
Really, which is a very weird time to put Silent Hill out. But.
Yeah. My hope is that they're going to polish the game for the next 6 months and it'll come around Halloween. But
maybe.
We'll see. I hope that's the case.
Or you put it out in July so you can have it on sale for Halloween.
That's true.
And really move some units.
Yeah. I'm still really torn on this, whether I'm excited to play it or not.
I have no confidence in this at all, just because not because of anything about, I know people hate Bloober Team for whatever reason or whatever. This is one of the best games ever made, and you are not going to improve on it.
Yeah, which is okay. Like I'm almost would be happier if they did not try to improve on it. I'm nervous about them trying to improve on it.
I mean, the way to do it would be just to remaster the whole thing into the like Resident Evil 4 style.
Yeah,
but that's not what they've done. They seem to have really remade it from the ground up into a very different.
It does
take on the material.
look that way, which makes me nervous.
I mean, I don't think it's going to be an action fest like this trailer is. Everyone's like, oh my god, it's all come. Like, yeah, they're just showing. If I had to cut a exciting quote unquote trailer for Silent Hill 2, I'd throw a lot of bashing monsters with a stick in it too, because there's nothing else that fucking happens.
Well, it was a gameplay trailer. It's the only gameplay that you have.
Otherwise, just him running around town with a flashlight.
Like, otherwise, it's this trailer. People walking slowly in the dark. That's pretty much all this trailer is. So I understand why they put out the combat trailer or whatever. I also understand why people thought it looked janky, because it does. But yeah, it looks like this game's going to make it in 2024. So if you're like me and you have it on your video game fantasy team, it's time to do your happy dance. Next up, Ninja Theory. There were big previews for Hellblade 2 that came out this week, Matt. A game that feels like it's been in development for frickin' ever. I feel like should be playing Hellblade 2, or I've already finished Hellblade 2 at this point. But it is finally coming down the home stretch. It has a solid release date for this year. They did a bunch of previews with the press this week. Most of them were pretty much glowing. And in the midst of all that coverage, Ninja Theory shared that it believes that people want shorter games. Now, oddly enough, it shares this belief after it's shared with everybody that the game is about 8 hours long, Hellblade 2.
Well, if you made an 8-hour game, you probably believe that to begin with.
Exactly.
So.
Now, it also claims that its fans, that's what they want, and the first Hellblade was also like 6 or 7 hours long, and it did fine enough to get a sequel, and so I do believe that there is a contingency of people out there that absolutely want shorter games.
Yeah, they're called parents.
Yeah, or older people in general. People who just don't have a lot of extra time lying around and want to still feel like they can accomplish something. How do you feel about shorter games? Do you think it's good for the industry or bad for the industry, or does it not matter?
I don't care.
Yeah?
The game should be as long as the game should be.
I agree with that. Yep. If you don't have a concept...
It's a sexist concept, but I always think of what my dad's English teacher, or he said his English teacher told him when someone asked how long the essay should be. He said it should be like a woman's dress, long enough to cover the subject, but short enough to be interesting.
I like that analogy.
Which is not something we'd say today in earnest. But it does get the point across.
Yeah.
Like you want to do the subject justice, but you don't want to outstay your welcome. Going back to that, the reason I don't watch TV shows much anymore, because like. You tell me, because it costs me a lot more to see a 2-hour movie than it costs me to see, for streaming subscriptions, to see a 13-hour TV show. But guess which one I'd rather watch?
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
So, and like, the first one told a pretty good story in the amount of time. It's a little, I'm sure there's a good documentary or a no-clip documentary somewhere in here about what took so long.
Yeah, because an 8-hour game to take that many years to make. I do realize they had a small development team. But...
Right, but so what took 7 years?
Yeah, it's really...
Some of that is probably transition to being owned by Microsoft, the pandemic. Like, there's a lot of obstacles in the way there, and the sensitivity of the subject matter, having to get all that right, portraying psychosis, portraying an actual mental illness in a sensitive and
they kind of figured that out with the first game.
They did, but then you got to do something. You got to do something else.
Yeah,
you got to carry it forward. You got to develop it, and so, but you can't solve it. Like you can't solve.
Yeah, there's no solution to that.
So you have to find a different route for that, and I'm sure that took a while. Like there's a lot of creative challenges here.
But still.
No, I don't. No, there is no. I don't think there is a but still there.
Really?
I think sometimes.
I mean, 7 or 8 years. I mean, we'll see when we play the game.
Assets and the amount of money, and the amount of like delays from like the pandemic and being bought by a major corporation. Yeah, it's longer than I would have liked, but like given what they're kind of working with here, I get it.
Now, Ninja Theory pointed to,
and it's not like this was going to turn the Xbox One around for anybody.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah.
It's
Ninja Theory pointed to longer games and said, look, a lot of those games only have 10 hours of content, and then it's just a copy and paste job to get you out to that 40 or 50 hours, and we don't want to do that. But I would argue there are games that have taken 7 or 8 years that are not that way. Like The Last of Us Part 2 is not that way. It has relevant content from beginning to end. It took 7 hours to make.
But one of the reasons,
bigger team,
like huge, much bigger team, and much bigger budget, and I would argue one of the reasons Last of Us 2 is special is because it is that.
Maybe.
Not a lot of games do that.
It's an exception. Yeah.
Most games that are that long, especially in the modern
Horizon
era,
Forbidden West was that way. Like, there's probably 30 hours of content there, but it took me like 50 or 60 to finish it.
Well, yeah, because there's about 30 hours of copy and pasted content there, which they do a better job of
hiding,
of sculpting. I would say, kind of like, I mean, The Witcher 3 is my template for that, where like there's tons of side quest stuff that doesn't matter, but everything feels unique.
Yeah.
Very few. Even Cyberpunk didn't get that right.
No, you're right. Yep.
Cyberpunk felt very copy pasted early. I don't think it does as much now. After the 2.0 update, they did a much better job making everything feel relevant and a little more crafted.
Yeah.
But that's really hard. I mean, if the people who basically perfected that in The Witcher 3 fuck that up in their next game, it's not that easy.
I mean, that's kind of the question really here.
So I think you could have done like a big sprawling Hellblade 2, but I also think it's a valid choice to not want to do that.
Well, I think you should make it similar to the first game as well. People expect the game to be similar, so it makes sense that they would do it.
I could definitely see like expanding out to I know there was speculation that trailer from a few years ago with the big monster on the beach that kind of was like, oh, is there going to be like group battles? Is there going to be like a city building element to it? It's like no. It sounds like it's going to be the same. She runs around and solves puzzles thing.
Yeah, I think the question becomes, Matt, is should we maybe be getting the 20 to 30 hour game without the extra 10 to 20 hours of copy and paste that we're getting now? Would you rather play the 20 to 30 hour game versus the one that's been bloated out to the 50 hours or whatever?
It depends what's bloating it.
Yeah.
Like, I think Horizon is just about right because I enjoy doing all the side things. I don't like the timed hunting things.
Yeah.
But everything else, I enjoy doing the poking around and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But there are other games where, like, I mentioned Mad Max last week. I like that a lot. But there's a point at which that thing gets too much.
Yeah.
By the last like 3 or 4 zones, and you're doing all the same stuff over and over again, and you're like, yeah, I get it. We can just move on now. Or Just Cause is generally too big, I would argue. The Saboteur, which I went back and played because they put that on too. Like that. That gets old pretty fast. The repetition of things gets old pretty fast, even though it's interesting in the beginning. Mm-hmm. Whereas you have I'd say a streamlined example would be something like Mafia 2.
Yeah.
Which like has a big open world, but there's nothing to do in it, so you don't actually bother exploring. They modeled almost all of New York, and there's no reason to look at it.
Yeah.
It's just background for when you're driving from quest point to quest point.
Yeah. In a lot of cases, the first one, I think you didn't even, the driving was like canned.
No, it wasn't canned, but it was like you couldn't go off the road.
Yeah.
It was literally incidental.
Yeah.
I guess they wouldn't be quests, they'd be missions. Someone should pinpoint at what point in historical settings things stop being quests and they become missions.
Or levels versus stages.
Is that like when do quests stop when the Industrial Revolution starts?
That's funny.
And become missions? Or is that a 20th? Because there's Industrial Revolution stuff in Fable 3, but we still call those quests. When is something not a quest and becomes a mission?
Yeah, I hear you.
Is it a gun? Is that what changes it?
What's
you have a gun in Fable.
Between a level and a stage in level design, in game design?
I think that's just a terminology issue. I think
stages were old school, like self-contained, smaller, and now levels are these sprawling.
I don't think of it that way because levels and stages are interchangeable. Back in the day, the thing the difference is the difference for me is like level and stage are just the same word basically. Board is the one that's board moving from
about that
boards
one.
to levels in stages. That's because a board is one screen.
Yeah.
That's what I would say.
Right.
Like a
like
board
the Atari 2600
yeah.
games.
Atari 20, or like Pac-Man.
Yeah.
Pac-Man is a board because
Yeah.
it's you can make a board game out of it. It's a board.
Yeah.
Whereas a level is like a multi-screen
Yeah.
monster, basically, like a thing.
I mean, I'll be honest, as somebody who is the king of getting to like the last 3 hours of a 40 or 50 hour game, like I would totally be cool if they chopped out the 15 hours of copy and paste.
Mm-hmm.
Like 30 hours, that's plenty for me to spend $70
It really
on
depends
the game.
on the game.
Yeah.
If it's something I enjoy, I will do it a lot and
Yeah.
do it over and over again.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Like Jedi Survivor could just keep going, as far as
Yeah.
I'm concerned. But like Death Stranding could probably have
Been about 20 or 30 hours.
A little shorter.
Yeah.
Could have gone a little shorter with that one, I think.
Let's check in with our chat here. You guys got some questions for us in here, I saw. Let's see. Swanland says, Banisher's Ghost of New Eden had way too much extra padding. I didn't get to the end of the game, so I don't know.
I didn't get to the end, but there is a point where like you realize you kind of got to double back on a lot of things and pick up the stuff you missed if you want to be completist about it.
Yeah.
Sorta. I found you could do a lot of stuff the first time through, and the map was interactive enough and told you where things you had you had to go back Metroid style and use your abilities to open up. Now I thought that they communicated that well enough that it wasn't a problem, but I didn't finish it either, so obviously.
Yeah.
But I didn't finish it because Dragon's Dogma came out. I mean,
right.
it wasn't
something else. It wasn't
it
that you
wasn't
want
a
to keep
problem with
playing.
the game.
Yeah. I may go back and actually put some more time into that now that we don't have anything to play. Noxatornitis says, I've been feeling like playing Horizon Forbidden West again, but I'm not worrying about all the mountains of side stuff. There's a really good game in there that I don't feel like I experienced at the right pace. Yeah.
Yeah, there's an element. If you're a completist and you go do everything as it comes in each area, as times when I went back to the main story, I'm like, who are you again?
Yeah.
I couldn't remember who any of the people were anymore.
Yeah.
Somebody also mentioned Sleeping Dogs. That is an excellent Swanlund. Yeah, Sleeping Dogs is an excellent open world. That's one of the best ones ever.
Yep. Agreed. And the interactivity in the open world.
Yeah,
it's insane.
And the scale is the way it scales. Like the fact that you can have like large scale like flight and like combat like with vehicle and all that, and then you can scale down to kung fu fights in an alley, and it all feels like as a complete and finished game. Like I don't know if anyone else has done that as well as that game.
No small feat. Yep. Next up, something I'm sure Matt was excited to learn about today.
Man who never has pork bun is never a real man. Remember.
A little bit of information I'm sure Matt was excited to learn about today. We got a new trailer for Star Wars Outlaws today that you're seeing right now. And we also we actually got its release date yesterday because Ubisoft Japan accidentally posted the release date. Star Wars Outlaws is coming out on August 30th, 2024.
Called it.
We were worried that we may not make it this year. Like, I didn't draft it in the fantasy league. So I was like,
if you remember when we did the draft, I said I think it might come out in August.
Yeah.
And then slip later if their November-October game, which is presumably the Ninja Assassin's Creed game, isn't going to make it.
Yeah.
So I don't 100% believe this is coming on the 30th. I think it depends on a couple of factors.
I mean, it is in this trailer, but we know that doesn't mean that much anymore.
But I did think it was a possible August release.
Yeah, and it is August 30th. This is way earlier than I thought. Like, I really thought...
This is why I picked it first.
Yeah, it would come down to like November, and we're like, oh, no, but...
Gives a lot of leeway for it to slip and still come out this year.
Yeah, it absolutely
does. Why I was confident with it in the beginning.
And I do wonder now, if I knew 100% that this was coming out this year, if I would have drafted this or if I would have drafted Rebirth. I think I probably would have drafted this. Just for my personal interest, I'd rather root for a Star Wars game than a Final Fantasy
is correct.
game.
Swan's correct. I was also basing it off merchandise because there's stuff related to this game slated for September, which is for like toys and stuff, which is like usually
that's a huge
they try
hint.
Yeah. And to be fair, because of the distribution system for like toys and retail stuff, even if this game slips to next year, that stuff will still come out in September. That has to happen.
Yeah. What did you learn from this trailer that made you excited or not excited, Matt? What is the plot?
I mean, the plot is basically that she seems to be some kind of small-time-ish hood of some kind, and she gets drafted by this guy to pull this heist that is vaguely defined, and whatever she does turns out real well, and maybe she has some connection. You make connections over the course of the game that seem to make you more important than they thought you were. And and she ends up in Jabba's palace for something. There's a lot of stuff.
Just
going
saw
on.
Han there in the Carbonite.
Yeah, so it takes place between Empire and Jedi.
It's important that they put that in the trailer.
And well, you gotta throw a little original trilogy in there, and you gotta establish when it's taking place.
Yeah.
It's also interesting because there is almost nothing that takes place between Empire and Jedi.
Right. Yeah.
Shadows of the Empire was the big between Empire and Jedi thing from the old EU, which is no longer Dash Rendar is canon again.
Okay.
Not in any real narrative sense, but he's shown up in material, which is canon. So the Outrider and Dash Rendar exists.
Yeah.
The Moldy Crow, Kyle Katarn's starship, does exist. Kyle Katarn has not been mentioned, but his ship has. So that's anybody's guess. Although I think his ship, that might have been Jan's ship. I don't know. And like the beginning of this starts with sort of the thing, the thesis statement of like all the underworld organizations are sort of realizing there's a lot of opportunity here because the Empire has been in solid control of the galaxy for years, but now that the rebels are making progress and the Empire is very concerned with what's happening there, it's an opportunity for all the underworld organizations to clean up and make a ton of money while the Empire can't do anything about it because they're busy fighting the Resistance.
Yeah.
And so that's sort of what's happened. And you've got the Pikes, which are like the bad guys from they were in Book of Boba Fett, but they started in Rebels for the most part. The Hutts, which everybody is Jabba and everybody knows them. Crimson Dawn, which Kira, Han's girlfriend from Solo, is in this somewhere. Probably not voiced by Emilia Clarke, I would think. But
why not?
It's too expensive.
Money. Yeah.
Also, she's not a very good actress.
Well, the truth comes out.
Although to be honest, I'm not super impressed by the voice acting in this trailer.
Yeah.
It was something's a little off about it. I don't really know how to describe it. It didn't feel as naturalistic as Jedi Survivor's trailers did, but maybe it's because it's a little more snippy, snappy, outlaw, quippy Han Solo
this
stuff.
is way more quick cuts.
And not as much like sort of like, you must feel the Force.
Right.
That's probably a little easier to flow with in the edit bay. But it looks very cool. I'm more interested in Star Wars when it's Force related and that kind of thing. I'm not the underworld, like kind of scum and villainy aspect of Star Wars is like the least interesting thing to me. But you can't argue with running around with a grappling hook and a blaster and swinging through all this. I mean, this all looks great. And having your own ship and flying around in space and landing on planets and seeing new stuff and gathering treasures Indiana Jones style, like it's about as close as we're going to get to that canceled Amy Hennig game. It looks gorgeous. It's same team, it's massive. So it's the same people, some of the same people that did Avatar, which was one of the most jaw-dropping games ever. And this is also that engine. So
I think it looks great. The big thing for me in that new trailer was all the locations.
Yeah. I think you're going to be able to go to a lot more planets than like Jedi Survivor let you go to.
That was what made a big impression on me for sure. I was like, oh, we're going to be going a bunch of different places. Like I was afraid it might just be like 2 planets or something like that, but doesn't look like it. It looks like there's going to be a lot more than that.
I mean, my guess is they are kind of probably do something Jedi Survivor-ish where there'll be some planets that have a big kind of Ubisoft open worldy area, and there's some planets that are just going to be a mission location, kind of thing. I mean, Mass Effect did that too.
Yeah, I'm totally fine with that. I got no problem with that.
Yeah, it looks pretty extensive.
And man, we only got like 3 or 4 months to wait for this thing.
Yeah, it's coming along.
It's really awesome, man. One of the most pleasant surprises of 2024 so far, in my opinion, that this game is coming way earlier than I thought. So I'm really, really excited for this game. It's definitely one of my most anticipated games of all of them right now. I'm sure a lot of you guys are pretty excited for it as well. AJ the Legend says, Bad Batch last few episodes have been amazing.
Yeah, I haven't caught up because I was so thoroughly bored by the second season of Bad Batch, I never finished it, so I'm sort of slowly crawling along. Kyle was from the Jedi Knight series, Dark Forces Jedi Knight. He's the Alex Trebek looking dude.
Yeah.
In the Jedi Outcast and all that.
Yep.
One of the most boring milquetoast characters in the history of Star Wars that for some reason a bunch of weirdos want back, even though Rogue One basically made him permanently non-canon because he stole the Death Star plans in the original EU in Dark Forces.
Yeah.
And clearly he did not in the new canon. That was the Rogue Force. So I don't know where you put him except as I guess as a smuggler. They did reference him a little bit in Jedi Survivor. You can buy his clothes. In Jedi Survivor, you can buy clothes of Kyle Katarn and Dash Rendar in for Cal. That's the only thing. That's the closest they've gotten to a reference to him, other than the remake of Dark Forces a few weeks ago, obviously.
Interesting. So there you go. Star Wars Outlaws, open world Star Wars game from Ubisoft, launching August 30th, 2024 for PC, PS5, and Xbox Series. I am jacked up for that game. Next up, BAFTA.
That's basically, my most anticipated is Outlaws and Endless Ocean 3. So figure that one out.
BAFTA.
I want to shoot aliens and scan fish. So if you ever make a Star Wars fish scanning game...
You got me right in the wheelhouse.
I guess that's actually Subnautica, isn't it?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, it is kind of. Yep. So BAFTA, which is this organization in Europe that tackles a lot of different things around video games, decided to announce what it believes
Decided to poll a bunch of lunatics
Yeah,
and get one of the most batshit rankings of characters in video games I have ever seen in my entire life.
Yep. According to BAFTA, and the people BAFTA talked to, the most iconic video game character of all time is Lara Croft.
No.
What the hell, man?
But also, like, you're burying the lead on this one because this is nuts,
Yeah.
right? Because this is number 1, Mario's number 2. Number 3? What? Do you remember what number 3 is?
I don't know.
It's the Hitman guy.
Oh, really? Agent
47? The third most iconic. You remember when you said you don't think anyone even knows what Hitman is? And apparently now he's the third most iconic character in all of video games, according to the BAFTAs.
I mean,
what?
BAFTA probably should have labeled this as, like, the most iconic video game character in Europe.
But he's not even...
Because Europe loves Hitman. Like, it's way bigger there than it is here.
It's nonsense.
Man, look, I agree with you, man.
Pikachu's not even in the top 10.
Dude, it's
what are you talking?
I don't know.
The top, like, Lara Croft is maybe top 10 material, but the top video game characters are Mario, Sonic, Pac-Man, and Pikachu.
Yeah,
like,
it's just,
top
that's
4.
the facts.
You can rearrange those 3. Mario's number 1. Like, Mario,
Yeah.
you can't go back.
Yeah.
You can rearrange those. Probably put Link at number 5.
Yeah.
Maybe you could mix around.
Well, they
those
would call
2,
him
3.
Zelda, though. They wouldn't call him Link.
I guess. Wait until the casting for the live-action Zelda movie comes out, and people get mad that they've made Zelda a boy.
Yeah.
Well, I guarantee you that's going to happen.
You'll see it online.
These idiots have never actually engaged with the content they're trying to outrage farm over.
Yeah, you're right.
Happens all the time with comic books. It's going to happen with Zelda. They're going to be mad that Zelda's a boy.
Yeah.
I promise you that.
Emperor Dread says BAFTA is a British organization. They just wanted a British icon to win. But why is Lara more of an icon in England than here?
It was a vote. I don't know who they're polling here.
I don't know, man.
Like, maybe you could kind of almost get away with that result in, like, 1997 when she was being advertised on buses and stuff. But she hasn't been relevant in forever. Like,
her last game basically bombed.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, I liked it a lot.
Yeah,
I'm
great.
saying I really like the remake trilogy or
Me
whatever
too,
they call them. But, like, she's
lost relevance. Like, even in 97, it would have been like Mario or Crash Bandicoot.
A year ago, a Mario movie made $1 billion. What are you fucking talking about?
Tomb Raider movies make what, about half of that, maybe?
Yeah, not even. Maybe all 3 of them combined made $500 million. I don't even think that much.
Yeah, but even if you go back to 97, like, it would have been Mario and, like, Crash Bandicoot.
Yeah.
And Sonic, probably.
But you could at least justify her being high in the rank.
Higher, yeah.
She was her cultural relevance then.
When she had her pointy triangle boobs.
Yeah. Like, they were pushing her way harder then. She was a PlayStation icon to some degree at the time.
Yeah, I was really surprised.
Nonsense.
I mean, we make fun of, like, the Video Game Hall of Fame nominees pretty much every year. This is way worse, to me anyway. Like, this selection I was like...
Very silly.
It really is, like... anyway. Go BAFTA.
Like, there's like everybody in that the top list was like, you'd be in a top 20, but the order's all wrong.
Yeah.
It's just bonk. Like, Pikachu not even in the top 10 is just insane. It's insane.
Yeah. I mean, I don't,
Agent
again...
47? Are you kidding me? You go show a picture of that character to just people on the street in any city in the world. I guarantee you maybe 10% will even have an idea
even
who
if
he
you
is.
showed the
and
barcode,
most people are just going to call him Hitman.
Yeah, they would call him Hitman. Even if you showed him the barcode on the back of his neck instead of just showing him from the front, like, they still wouldn't know.
And reminder that there have been 2 Hitman movies.
Right. That both bombed horribly.
Well, they're not good.
Yeah.
But they existed.
Yeah, they did.
Been 3 Tomb Raider movies.
Yeah. Maybe that's why. Maybe that's where this is coming from. They're
Sort
like,
of. I
They're
mean,
like, what games have had movies made about
it? If they're
it?
polling BAFTA people who are movie people, like, I've heard of them. I don't.
Yeah.
But then how do you get? Who remembers those Hitman movies?
Nobody. I don't get it.
I
man.
remember them just because they were.
I remember they existed and they were bad. That's it. I tried to watch one of them. I made it about 30 minutes in, and I was like, I'm out.
I remember one of them. I don't remember which one it was. Who was the guy? He's a famous, like, good actor who's played him the one time, and Timothy Olyphant. Yeah, it's very. There's a shot where he's running from an exploding room, and it's very clearly him on a green screen running away from it, and he's just sort of like jogging, sort of like he's got like the most goofy look on his, like, nonchalant look on his face, and there's like a huge fireball behind him, and like we had a bad movie night where we watched that and we screenshotted it, and to this day we send it around to each other as like, oh no, bad things happening, better run away. This is a commentary thing. That's the only lasting legacy of that Hitman movie ever, anywhere in the world. That's the only people that ever made any impression on.
Yeah.
Like, I understand, like, but it's just like, Agent 47, I don't even know if that would make the top 20 for me.
That's absurd, man.
Iconic?
I mean, that's insane.
Iconic?
It's insane. He's just a bald dude. That's the other thing. It's like, Lara, okay, brunette, long hair, big boobs.
Yeah, like a lot of... I think
there are things you remember her for.
I think the top 10 has to be characters that non-gamers would sort of vaguely recognize, even if you don't know who... Lara, maybe
everybody knows who
even
Mario
if you call
is.
her Laura, you're gonna be like, yeah, I know, that's the Tomb Raider girl. That's Angelina Jolie. I know her. Yeah,
most people would call her Laura.
Yeah,
that's the
Laura,
the ironic part about it. They don't even know her real name.
But like, you get into the top, out of the top, the top 10. You're talking about like those 5, Master Chief.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even Samus probably doesn't make the top 10. Like, if you
or people would look at her and be like, I recognize that. I don't know what her name is.
Pac-Man and Ms. Pac-Man are probably in there. Donkey Kong wasn't even on the list.
It's insane.
What?
Yeah, it's crazy.
What? Donkey Kong's tie is more iconic than Agent 47.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. And that's why we even brought it up here. BAFTA, you guys are on drugs, man. I have no idea what you're doing. And I'll be honest with you, Matt. Like,
Aiden's iconic cat.
Like, when I see BAFTA's other awards, like their Game of the Year award, I rarely agree with like anything that BAFTA puts out. And
some of that is because of what qualifies and what doesn't qualify.
Right. Yeah.
But like, that list was bonkers.
It's really bad. Yeah. And then our final story for housekeeping today, there's a new handheld on the way. Somebody in our chat was mentioning earlier about how many PC handhelds there are and how it's crazy that they're all doing well. Well, there's another one on the way. It is called the Bitboy, and it is based all around crypto and NFTs. And their big, unique selling proposition is that while you're playing games on it, you're actually mining Bitcoin. But then they said that, like, you'd have to play it for like 1 billion years to earn like 50 cents because it's so weak. And that's what mining Bitcoin is all about, is like, how powerful are your rigs? How many numbers are you crunching? That's how you earn Bitcoin. And this thing's just some little dinky, like, play anything emulator.
This is a scam that's a day late and a crypto dollar short.
Yeah, an NFT short.
You missed it. You missed the boat, boys. It's over.
And the crazy part about it is they're like, you have to supply all your own ROM. It's still just like any other handheld. Like, there's nothing unique about it other than they're just calling it, like, the Bitboy. No, so people will connect the dots between...
You want something that does that kind of retro thing, go get an Analog Pocket, which is back in stock now.
Yeah.
And it'll do way better for you.
Here's one thing I would also say.
You won't get 4 half cents of crypto coins every year, but who gives a shit?
Here's one thing I would also say is, like, if somebody announces a piece of hardware and there's no trailer for the piece of hardware when they announce it, stay away. Mm-hmm. Stay away. It's a scam.
Even the Amico had a trailer.
Exactly. That was my next point. Is like, even the Amico had a trailer on his fucking debut day. Not this one. So I would just stay far away. Barry Gooster saying he or she loves the Analog Pocket. A lot of people love it.
Great system.
Yeah. I mean,
especially when I got a dock for it. You can play it on the TV.
Yeah. Pretty awesome.
It comes pre-jailbroken. You can put like open
anything.
FPG cores on it, play whatever the hell you want. Like,
yeah,
it's really good.
Matt has one that's loaded up. That is really, really impressive.
Yep.
And I'm right on the edge of buying one. I'm right there. Maybe that's what I asked for Christmas this year. But yeah, so stay far, far away from the Bitboy. I'm just telling you right now. I would honestly just stay far away from anything that uses the word NFT.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that should have been obvious from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, it's crazy that somebody would try to launch something in 2024 and associate it with NFTs.
They don't really understand that was a failure in some places.
How do they not understand?
Because the people who are still on that NFT tip are they're the slow ones.
Yeah,
they're behind, and they don't understand that the way these things work is the first few people in and out get rich. Everyone else is left holding the bag. That is what's happening right now with AI art and all that AI crap right now.
Yep.
If you ever see someone who's talking up AI art, that's not even AI art. AI can't make art. It's not art. It's image shitting.
It's smashing shit together.
They're just montaging stolen art together and shitting out an image.
Yeah.
You see someone talking up AI image generation, go into their timeline, go look at their history of posting. And I promise you, a year ago, they were trying to push NFTs.
Oh, yeah.
Every single time.
That's the same person.
Every single time. The NFT
people.
grift failed. The next grift is AI image generation.
Yeah, you're
That's
right.
it. And they will always be trying to sell you some kind of subscription in the end. There's a guy in this board game group I'm in on Facebook, and every few days he pops up trying to get people to subscribe
to his newsletter?
For his fucking AI board game designing app he made for like $100 subscription. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And he posts these giant essays about why it's the future. And I was like, did ChatGPT write that for you? He's like, well, I changed some words here and there. And it's just like, it's so fucking transparent.
Yeah.
Stop it.
The sad part is there's so much of this going on that we don't even know about right now. Because we just don't have the time.
And that's the thing.
Or the care.
And you get the people that are grifting about it going, it's like, oh, you see the mediocre artists are afraid of it. That's why because they know that they're... Like, no one's afraid that AI art is going to be better than real art. They're afraid that dumbass executives are going to fire all the artists because they think that AI can do it. There's going to be an adjustment period where corporations have to learn that the general public will not accept this garbage as the art for things they pay their hard-earned money for.
Well, we have to make sure that the general public, in fact, does reject that, because I'm not so sure it's going.
They already are. I see huge pushback on all that stuff
I hope
from
so.
every walk. Even if it's someone who doesn't understand what AI art necessarily is, I've seen people look at because people have tried to push like card games and like board games with just all AI image generation, and even people that don't know what the AI image generation stuff is will be like, why does it look weird?
No, you can pick up on it. Yeah. Or that's just missing, like the hands are turned backwards, or like it's just
And
weird.
there's always the thing of like, well, eventually it'll be indistinguishable. No, it will not be indistinguishable, because eventually they're just going to be feeding on their own algorithms, and if there's no more art to ingest and steal, they're just going to be pumping their
own stuff.
And also you can tell what they feed it on. It's like there's a reason
you
so much AI
themes.
image generation looks like a bad Zack Snyder movie, because the people who feed this shit into the AI algorithms are big Zack Snyder fans.
It's hilarious.
That's why Rebel Moon looks so generic, not because it's generic on itself, but because it looks like all the AI shit that's been generated for the last 2 years.
I'll say this, I'm surprised if Bitcoin went back up again. Like when it fell down to like 16,000 a coin, I was like, it's never gonna go back up, dude. It's at like 70-some thousand
because
now.
Bitcoin to some degree is a self-contained ecosystem.
Yeah.
Like the people who are like hardcore into that, the hodlers,
Yeah.
are always gonna be able to manipulate that up and down to some degree. But the challenge becomes, try getting actual money out of that.
Right.
Like if you hold a Bitcoin right now, try getting your actual full value
You can
of
sell
Bitcoin.
it and get your money.
Not if you were trying to really cash out.
Someone else has to buy it.
Right.
But believe me, there's people waiting to buy because.
But I guarantee you that will actually affect the price of Bitcoin in the next day.
Yeah, that's
like
true.
That's how sensitive the market is.
I'm still surprised it's shot up so much. Like from where it was down at like 15.
There are enough hardcore people on that hold enough chunks of the Bitcoins that they can basically manipulate that market back up to some degree.
That's true.
It may or may not go back up to where it was.
Yeah.
But there's always going to be a dead cat bounce, as they say, just because of the nature of the cult surrounding that.
Mm-hmm.
The question becomes if any one of these major players ever decides they want to get out and actually have real money instead of this play money, that's going to affect things in a way that may or may not be recoverable.
We also have to remember that's going to happen all at once.
Right.
Because you got to realize there's people our age who all bought Bitcoin. They're all going to sell it at the same time when they're all ready to retire. Yep. And then we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And that's why the narrative is always about, if you look at the narrative on that, it's always about like, oh no, we never do that. It's making Bitcoin a viable way to borrow against or to leverage against, and that's how you pay for things in the real world. But that is a lie, because that's the grift, because everyone knows that again, the first few people out are going to get rich.
Yeah.
Everyone else is going to be left holding the bag, and the people in on this shit big know that.
Yeah.
That's why that's the narrative, because that's not what they're going to do. It's what they need everyone else to do to ensure that they get out with the money.
We just saw it with the DJT stock.
Yeah. And
all the rich guys got
right.
in. They went up to 70.
Right.
They all sold their shares. Now it's down to 30. All the poor people lost their asses.
And unfortunately for Trump, he couldn't sell it either.
He's going to lose his ass. He's not going to make any money off of it either. Yeah.
But that's the scam.
Yeah, it's the grift. So anyway, if you come across a Bitcoin handheld, say hell no. Run away. And that's it for our housekeeping. I told you we had a bunch of big topics for housekeeping for this week's show. We're ready to get onto the bulk of the show. But before we do that, let's hear a word from our awesome sponsor, LS Cream. LS Cream is a fine cream liqueur created by fellow gamer and sifter Stevens Charles. It's inspired by an ancestral recipe from Haiti called Cray Mass, and a double gold winner for its original taste at the New York Wine and Spirit International Competition. LS Cream can be enjoyed on the rocks or as a mixer for drinks with its rich blend of fresh cream and neutral grain spirits with notes of coconut, vanilla, cinnamon, and nutmeg. It's great in coffee or to make espresso martinis. To learn more, discover amazing drink recipes, or to track down your own bottle using a handy store locator, head to creamls.com/sifted. That's creamls.com/sifted. That's right, people. It's time to get your ass some cream ass. Head to creamls.com/sifted. There's a store locator there. You can find places local to go buy the cream mass. You can find an online locator there where you can figure out how to get it shipped to your house. It is an incredible liquor that mixes so well with so many things. If you do use a store locator and you go into your local store, you're trying to find it, this is what it looks like. Easy to find. I think this is the only all-black bottle that I see.
Oh, there's a few.
Are there?
Yeah, not that shape.
Can you think of what is one of the other ones?
I've seen, they're not brands I recognize, but when I've gone to Bevmo down the street to go pick
You've seen
more
other
of those
all
up.
black bottles?
All black bottles, yeah. But it's
seen
not
one.
that shape, though.
Yeah.
But there have been all black.
Is Bailey's black?
Mostly brown,
Is
think.
it brown? I think you're right. I think it is brown. Yeah. But that bottle is easy to pick out when you go to the liquor
It's
store.
the shape in the LS pop. The big LS are the watchwords there.
Yeah.
That's how you see it on the shelf.
I noticed when I go to a liquor
I also
store
noticed
and
they started
scan.
separating them from the Baileys.
Oh, they started separating them?
The one here, they're on a different shelf from the Baileys. They're higher up.
Is that good or bad?
Well, Bailey's is on the bottom shelf there, and LS Cream is 2 shelves up, more closer to like low eye level.
Well, that's where you want it. You want it at eye level. Yeah. Again, go to creamls.com/sifted. Support Stevens Charles more than anything. He's an awesome guy. He did an episode of GameFace with us a couple years ago. He came in and sat in for a couple topics. Mm-hmm. He's not just like a guy who owns a liquor company that kind of likes games. He's crazy hardcore, just like us. Support people like that. Support people that are like us. Support your fellow sifters. Support your fellow gamers. Support LS Cream. Again, go to creamls.com/sifted and get yourself your own bottle. I promise you, you will not regret it. I don't know a single person that I turned on to LS Cream that was like, ew. Every single person is like, oh, that's good. Every single one. Again, go to creamls.com/sifted. Get yourself a bottle of LS Cream. I guarantee you, you will not regret it. And with that, it's time to get on with the bulk of GameFace 383. We're going to kick things off with a pretty big game that we didn't have a chance to touch on or to cover in the last episode of GameFace, but somebody mentioned it at the end of last week's episode, and I was already all over it. I knew I was going to play it this week. Matt, you did not play Alone in the Dark, correct?
Nope.
I'll say this. I know you don't like survival horror games, so I think you probably made the right choice. But the first thing I'm going to say about Alone in the Dark is it's way better than you think it is. It would
have to be.
Okay, fair enough. Because I also thought, I mentioned with Stellar Blade in last week's episode, I also thought with this game that it was going to be like one of those games where like it's going to get like a 2 or a 3 out of 10 or something like that. It's way, way better than that, for sure. Let me start. Yeah, you never would have guessed that this would be the beginning of Alone in the Dark. And the funny part was this was rendering last night. And my wife came in and she's like, oh, let's go get dinner or whatever. And she saw the frog, and the frog made her laugh too, Matt. I don't know why. It's so weird. But let me start by sharing the plot with you. Now, if you've played prior Alone in the Dark games, the premise is still pretty much the same. You can choose to play one of two characters. You can either choose to play as the daughter, Emily Hartwood, who is played by Jodie Comer, or you can play as a private detective, whose name is Edward Carnby, who you probably know from prior. He's the main character in Alone in the Dark through the years.
Even though there's no consistency really between who he is in these games.
He's different like every time.
Yeah, he was an emo weirdo in the Central Park one.
Yeah.
And now he's Hopper from
Stranger Things. Yeah. So the lead role, Edward Carnby, is played by David Harbour. As you remember,
the image, the text faded in. There, I couldn't tell if that was the glare or the texture loading.
Well, you're gonna see some anomalies here and there, Matt, in this B-roll. I'm just gonna let you know right now. You're gonna see some things here and there that don't quite add up. So anyway, you can choose to play either as Edward or Emily. After you get through a little bit of this prologue section, there comes a point where they're like, okay, choose. And I'll say this. Once you choose the one, you don't hardly ever see the other one again. Like they
Resident Evil 1 style. They
reconnect a couple times here and there, but pretty much you're kind of on your own playing this game once you say goodbye to the other character. I was kind of surprised by that. I thought their quests might be interwoven a little more than they are, but they're not. But I would also argue that probably is a sign that there's some replay value to this game if you decide to play it again as the other character.
Like to do that to yourself.
Yeah.
I won't stop you.
Well, again, this game is not as bad as you think, Matt. I was surprised by that as well. And I will say, too, that this game, appropriately, is kind of a cross between Stranger Things, Blair Witch, and Alone in the Dark, and with a taste of The Conjuring, because you have the male-female team who are trying to solve supernatural mysteries. That gets you to the Conjuring part of it. But basically, he is a private investigator. She has come here because her uncle has gone missing. They've been trying to contact him.
I cannot figure out why it's chugging.
Matt, that was what I was getting at. I'm playing this...
Like, it's chugging when he just raises his arm.
Oh, there's scenes in this game where you open a book and start flipping the pages and the frame rate bottoms out. I am playing this, I'll just let you know, I am playing this on quality mode, not on performance mode. So this is the mode most likely to chug, but it looks a little better, obviously. I do tend to play most of my games in this mode instead of the performance mode. I'm not sure 100% why I do that, but I do. I'm just being honest. So anyway, you are traveling here with Emily to figure out where in the hell her uncle has gone. So they've been trying to reach him. He's not replying. They've been calling the house, the mansion that he lives in. No one's responding. So she hires him, Edward, to be her private investigator to go with her to the mansion to try to figure out what the hell happened to her uncle. Well, as you've been seeing through the B-roll, they get there. He's nowhere to be found. The people in the house are these weird, like, lunatics. This game sometimes gives me a little bit of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre vibe to it. But you get there, there's these crazy people there, and then the house help, and nobody seems to know where the uncle is. And so you set off on a quest through the mansion, and there he is. That's what he looks like. You set off on a quest through the mansion to try to find the uncle, basically. And as you start digging in, you find that item that the uncle was holding right there. It's like this talisman. It's like this magical thing that you use throughout different parts of the game to put onto objects in the game. And it almost is like a combination lock, like, solver that you can put on objects, and you put a code into it and it'll like unlock doors, or sometimes it shows you a glimpse of where you need to go next in the mansion. The game design, the level design in this, at least at the beginning when you're first going through the mansion, is very Resident Evil. It is just this labyrinth of rooms with keys that you don't yet have. The map is very good at showing you, though, okay, you just got this key. Start flipping through the floors of the map, you'll find an icon that'll show you where you need to take that key. And that is huge, because otherwise you're just going to wander around basically trying to use trial and error to figure out which lock you should be trying to unlock. The game does a good job of kind of guiding you in that way. But I'll say this too, this game does not hold your hand per se. Like, there's a lot of times where you do need to figure out what you need to do on your own, and it can get a little frustrating at times. I'm not going to lie. I hadn't really played a survival horror game like this in quite a while. So as I said, you choose between Edward or Emily at the start, and again, you never see, like, anyone else. And then, as you start getting into the mystery, you start coming across monsters and creatures. You start getting teleported to these alternate realities, which is where the Stranger Things element starts to come in, where you get transported to this upside down world, basically, where there are all these creatures, and like you get transported to different locations. Like there's one part of the game where you end up getting transported to like downtown New Orleans from where you are. And a lot of times those plot devices are cheap. It allows people who write plots to just like take you down a path and then just yank the carpet out from underneath you by saying, oh, he was in an alternate world then. Like, I've talked about this before on GameFace. I hate that kind of stuff.
If you do that in Alan Wake 2, you win a BAFTA.
Right, exactly. That's my point I was getting at. The other thing I would say, too, the beginning of this game...
I would say that it's a good indicator that there are good and bad ways to do that.
That's true. Yeah.
And to be fair, that is a very Lovecraft thing. Like being whisked away to other worlds in your dreams or in your hallucinations is a pretty these have always been, the very first one is very much a Lovecraft story. So they are kind of going back to the roots on this. No pun intended, because everything seems to be
made out of a plant.
I don't feel very impressed by the hitboxes on it. It feels like you're missing when you shouldn't miss a lot of times here.
Oh, Matt, the hitboxes in this are a problem. I'll get to them in a minute. It's not just about aiming either. It's about like traversal and stuff like that. So eventually you start getting transported to these alternate realities where all these creatures are. You're fighting all these creatures. And then you go to the mansion back into reality, and like nobody talks about it. Nobody ever says, hey, you seen these monsters running around the mansion? Like, hey, here's how you should fight. Like, he doesn't talk about it. When he runs into people in the mansion, and like he literally has meetings with like, let's go talk to the doctor. And he goes into a very normal doctor's office and talks to him about the medical conditions that the uncle has. And he doesn't bring up that there's monsters running around the mansion that he has to keep fighting and killing with guns. Like, it's so bizarre. He doesn't talk about it either. Like, he also runs into those weird, creepy people that we saw in that first cutscene when they get into the house. And those people act like nothing is happening. I don't know. I don't understand, like, why it's that way. It's this weird, disconnected dissonance where he's the only person that's like, even when he runs back into Emily, like later on in the game, he doesn't say to her, holy shit, man, there's these monsters running around. I have to shoot him. I'm running out of ammo. Like, nothing. It's so freaking weird. Like, it's one of those games where you're just constantly guessing, like, is everybody living in an alternate reality because nobody wants to talk about the monsters and they just know it's there and they know he's dealing with it because he's all... I'm just like, what? But the base of the game is, and the plot, ultimately, is running around the mansion, solving puzzles, every once in a while getting into combat while you're trying to figure out what the hell happened to this uncle. And we were talking earlier about pacing, Matt. The pacing in this game is abysmal. This is my biggest issue with this game overall, is that you go through these crazy long stretches where you're in the mansion and you're doing the crazy old school Resident Evil thing. Here's this key. Where do you take it? Here's this talisman. Where do you use that? Oh, here's this garden hose. What's that used for? Oh, there's this hole over here that you need to fill up with what? Like, there's huge stretches where you go like an hour and a half or 2 hours just doing that stuff. And then it's like the switch flips, and then all of a sudden it's about combat, and you're fighting the horrific creatures with the guns. And like most survival horror games, you don't get much ammo. You're always solving like locks and stuff like this. Again, it never mixes it. It's never like you do this for 5 or 10 minutes, and then you're in a fight. It's like you do the puzzle stuff for like an hour, and then you fight for an hour. And then you go back to the puzzle stuff for an hour, and then you fight for an hour. Like, it never mixes things well, and it feels like you're doing the same thing for way too long in this game. And that is my biggest complaint, which actually is kind of good now that I think about it. Like, if that's my biggest complaint with that game, it's probably doing a lot better than maybe you thought it was going to do. What else we have to talk about here? So the health system, the way the health system works in the game is you get hit by the enemies, you take damage, you have to take drinks. I guess it's like, I think it's like a flask and liquor that he's drinking. He drinks throughout the whole game. Like, every time you meet somebody in the house, they always have liquor. Like, hey, you want a drink? Like, he never thinks twice about maybe they're going to poison his crap. Like,
I mean, that's how it was back in the day.
I guess it was. Yeah.
Go watch Bewitched. Everyone's just constantly drunk.
Yeah.
Most, especially because like how water was unreliable in terms of dysentery and all that stuff. Like, people drank alcohol as like the safest drink for like. Yeah. History makes a lot more sense when you realize that most people were kind of smashed all the time. Like,
most people would come home from work, and the first thing they do is go to their minibar and make a drink and like drink their drink to take the edge off after work. Or like, people don't really do that anymore. Yeah, it's kind of funny.
The punchline of half the business-related jokes in Bewitched is make it a double.
Yeah,
it's
that's right. Yeah.
It's like the most relatable thing. It's like, oh yeah,
make it a double.
Make it a double.
That's funny.
I've never said that in a bar in my life.
Yeah, I
Like,
haven't either.
Nobody does
They've
that.
asked me if I want to double
Yeah.
at clubs or concerts where they're like, you don't want to come back and wait in the line for like
I've
2
just
hours.
never been as tired as Larry Tate is the problem. I've never needed a double.
Yep. So like I said, like the game goes in stretches where you do a lot of combat for a while, then you do a lot of puzzles. The puzzles are like these puzzles where like you have to remember something, like an image or something like that, and then go somewhere else and remember I did things in this game I haven't done in years, Matt. Like I took pictures of my TV screen playing this game. Because the game itself doesn't do a good enough job of cataloging stuff like that for you. So, like, there's a lot of times where you have to compare an image or a picture on the wall and cross-reference it with something else. When you go and look in your, like, log in the actual game interface, you can't see it. Like, the picture's, like, this big and you can't blow it up. So I started taking photographs with my cell phone of my TV screen with that stuff. Like, that's a shortcoming. Like, a game should handle all that stuff. I can't remember the last time I did that, Matt. Right, to take a picture.
Of course he can't remember those things. He's drunk.
What?
Of course he can't remember those
No,
things.
I can't remember the last time I had to do that.
Right, but he can't remember, like,
Oh,
those
what?
things.
Oh, exactly. You mean what was on the wall?
Yeah, he can't put that in a journal. He's drunk.
Hashtag realism.
Yeah, you got to do the job for him.
So I have not done
This
that
all
in years.
sounds
I had to do
very
it.
tedious.
It's not, though. I enjoyed playing this game. So let's talk about the gameplay. The first thing I would say is that all the combat is clumsy. Whether you're using melee or you're using your guns, it feels like you're only roughly controlling things. And I think it might be on purpose. I think it might be to create that sense of like, oh crap, like this combat system, I'm holding on by my fingernails and like...
Yeah, see, that doesn't do that to me. It just makes me angry.
Well, if that won't make you angry, what will make you angry, Matt, is the level design in this game. Because it's that old school level design with a bunch of dead ends. Where enemies chase you, and they're faster than you in this game, and so you run away and turn around and try to shoot them. Eventually, you get stuck at like a dead end, and you're just like, oh my god, I hope I can finish these guys off before they get to me. And if they don't, this is where the hit detection comes in, the hitboxes comes in. It is almost impossible to get away once they trap you. Like, it feels like your hitbox around your character model is the size of an elephant. Like, no matter what you do, you can't get away from it. And they just slowly just attack you until you die. And so you learn after a while to, like, watch out. You're like, don't run to a dead end and get trapped there. A lot of the game is learning the enemy behavior and then recognizing the level design and manipulating the enemy behavior around the level design. Like... There's stealth in this game. You can press triangle and you kind of hunch down and like sneak a little bit, but they still find you. It's like it does nothing. You could literally be hunched down and have that analog stick just barely push forward. So he's creeping, enemies still hear you. So I think what they want you to do is use a mechanic where you pick up stuff and throw it to distract the enemies. But that also has a weird mechanic where when you pick it up, you have to hold the trigger until you're ready to throw it. And when you release it, then you throw it. You don't, like, pick it up and then hold it and then, like, run around and then hold a button and throw it. Like, you have to hold that button in the whole time you're trying to avoid the enemies while you're throwing the distraction object. So, they try to do stealth in this game. It doesn't work out all that well. And, again, the gameplay is a little loosey-goosey, but I think it does add tension to the game. I feel like if I had Call of Duty's aiming system in this game, it would be way too easy. They'd have to, like, ratchet up either the amount of damage that the enemies do or the hit points that the enemies do. What I'm getting at is I feel like they've found a pretty good compromise on this stuff, Matt. Like, I feel like you're a gumshoe private investigator. You're a little bit dumb, honestly. Like, the way he portrays the character in this, he's a little bit of an idiot. He's like a drunk or whatever. And I do wonder if there's a little bit of them trying to impart his personality into the combat. So, it is clumsy. The melee feels really awkward. There's no lock-on for the melee at all. So you're really just kind of like getting in the vaguely the right direction and then just wailing. And they constantly give you new melee weapons. Like you start out, which is like a hammer. Eventually they're giving you like shovels and like sledgehammers and axes and things like that. And what I've found is that you shoot an enemy twice, and then you finish him off with the melee. Because, again, this game gives you no ammo. I never had more than, like, 15 bullets. I never had more than 10 shotgun shells. Like, they just keep them at a minimum. They make sure that every shell matters. And, again, it does increase tension in the game. What else we got here? So there's a lot of the old school survival horror games, there's just tons of stuff that you collect. You're running around.
That guy looks a lot like the old Edward Carnby.
Well, look at his hair, by the way.
Yeah, a little jittery. Man might need a relaxer conditioner for that.
Yeah, well, people don't use conditioner anymore, Matt. I think that's his problem. So anyway, so there's a bunch of objects that you can collect as you go throughout the game. They're just sitting around in rooms. You may not think that they mean anything, but they do.
His hair is terrified.
Yeah. You collect collections. So, like, you'll collect, like, 3 random objects that don't seem like they're tied to each other, but the game will tie them together. And once you collect all 3 of them and collect that collection, it will unlock stuff. Like, that's how you get the shotgun. You have to collect 3 items, and then you go back to the room where the shotgun was in a case, and the case will be open, and you'll get the shotgun. So there is some incentive to collect the random stuff that's in the game. If you don't do it, a lot of times you won't get some of the best weapons in the game. And then my final comment about it is really that it's just dark AF. We talked about this with a game last week, where you're just like Dragon's Dogma 2, how you're like messing around with like the setting. I could not play this game during the daytime. Even if I close all the blinds in the room and turn off the lights in the room, I still was straining to see what was happening. I mostly had to play this at night, and that was the only time I could make real headway.
There's a thing for that. I mean, obviously I got Dragon's Dogma 2 on PC because I knew I could run it better than the consoles, but also I realized if I didn't get it on PC and I got it on the consoles out in the main room, I couldn't play it until nighttime.
Yeah.
Because the glare from the back door is too bright.
This game is like this too, so if you play it, I would recommend bumping up the brightness if you can, if you want to try to play it at night.
Dragon's Dogma, you can't actually bump the brightness up enough to make it bright.
No, you're right.
I don't think.
Yeah.
Obviously, I don't know about
this game's right on the borderline for sure. But so you're saying right now, you're like, oh, Shane, man, you seem like you complain about a lot of stuff, but you say that you still like the game. I do like the game. I have enjoyed my time playing Alone in the Dark. Would I go back and play it again as the female protagonist? Probably not. There's no real choice in the story here. So you're not like, there are points where they make you make this. It doesn't affect things on down the road. My guess is probably playing as her doesn't change the game that much. I don't know that. I have not played as her, so I could be completely wrong on that. Looking at the way the game is built, though, and the way his campaign works, my guess is they're probably mostly the same. But again, I don't know that 100%, so don't quote me on that. But I had fun playing this. I think what drove me more through this game, and one I would say too, is that the game has more combat than I thought, and the creature design is really, really good. And there's a bunch of stuff going on behind the scenes with the uncle that's very mysterious and doesn't seem to make any sense with what goes on in the mansion, and that is handled very well at the end. Like, the conclusion of the game is very satisfying. At least I felt it was. And I just had fun playing the game. It's not there's no RPG elements. There's nothing that you're improving or increasing or tweaking. Like, you get a gun, that's the gun. Like, you're not going to get, like, an upgrade that snaps something onto it or it becomes more powerful. You don't get spells. You don't become better at aiming. Like, there's no RPG elements in this at all. This is just straight up OG 90s survival horror without the fixed camera angles. The shooting in this, it's over the shoulder, just like RE4. And just like RE4, you can't move very much while you're shooting. You're basically a sitting duck turret while you're shooting. And again, that adds a little bit of tension to games that some games don't necessarily have. And so I had fun with this. Like, I've had fun going back and solving these old-timey survival horror RE puzzles that I haven't fiddled around with for a really long time. I had the combat, like, it always kept me on my edge because it felt like it wasn't responsive, and if you got trapped, you were just basically screwed. I will say this, too, the checkpoints in this, while, again, I talked earlier about how you're using, like, a flask to, like, rejuvenate your health, you can only have, like, a handful of those at a time. So you do have to be smart about how you use them. You just don't want to just keep drinking them or whatever. But the checkpoints in this can be a little dirty. There are some times where you fight through, like, 20 dudes, and you just haven't quite made it to that next doorway that will trip, like, the next checkpoint, and you die, and you have to go all the way back and fight all the guys again. So the checkpoints in this were a little dirty. But overall, like, it wasn't... I felt the challenge in this was good. Like, it never was so much that I got frustrated and was like, this game's a piece of crap, I don't want to play. But it was challenging enough that I still had tension while I was playing. I still cared and thought I was in danger. Stuff like that's important when you're playing games like this. So I had fun with this game. Here's the thing. They're selling it for $60. No way in hell this game should sell for $60. Like, this is probably the best $40 game you'll ever play. And I have a feeling it may not be long until the game drops down to... It may even be $40 in some quarters right now, Matt. I really struggle to believe that this is going to stay at that $60 price for very long. It's not 70 at least. They didn't try to go that extra $10. It is next gen only. It is PC, PS5, and Xbox Series only.
But it's funny because it looks like something that could have run on the 360.
So here's what I say about the visuals of this game. It looks fine until you see a human being, and that's when it goes to crap. Otherwise, like the environments, because you get to go to these alternate realities, they have a lot of latitude to create some really cool stuff, and they do a pretty cool job of it. There's some really cool creatures in this. Now, I will say, the rank and file creatures are pretty repetitive, but some of the bigger things that you end up fighting and the bosses and things like that, pretty freaking cool. So I like the art in this. Technically, the game, obviously, it stutters. Humans look awful. But I thought
Is this your footage or the provided footage?
This is my footage. Everything we've seen except so the first was B-roll from the retail. That was what I first showed, the first like 20-minute chunk. Then I showed a trailer. And then this is B-roll from a demo. This part is never even in the game. This is like a preamble or whatever.
This is interesting because it's like it's chugging here too.
Right. Yeah. So the engine isn't great, but overall I thought the art was good. I thought the creature design was good. And I just had fun playing the game. And going back to the editorial I wrote this last weekend about how I don't find enough games that are just fun to play, I found this one to be fun in a mindless way. So I had a good time with it. I would not recommend that you spend $60 for Alone in the Dark 2024. Again, once it gets to about $40, I think you got a good price there.
I think if Epic Game Store ever gives it away, I might play it.
Yeah. But again, for me, it was a pleasant surprise. Like, I had very low expectations for this. Just having watched trailers and having played this early demo that you're seeing right now, I really thought it was going to be like a 2 or a 3 out of 10. It's definitely way better than that. It's a competent video game, ultimately. Will it revive the Alone in the Dark franchise?
That's a step up for the franchise.
No, it is. Competent is a step up.
Yeah.
Will this revive the franchise? I don't think so.
No, I mean, nobody even knew this happened.
And the big problem is that, like, there's just, other than, like, the weird people that you meet in the mansion, they're memorable. But, like, the lead characters are just, like, blank pieces of paper. Like, they only hired David Harbour because people associate his face with stuff like this. Yeah. Like, it's not that he's a great actor or he was some iconic face that people are going to remember, and that's what you need. Like,
yeah, you're just trying to get on the Stranger Things coattails, which, like, unfortunately, this came out at, if you put this out around the same time Stranger Things season 5 came out, you might have something. Yeah. But they didn't. They put it out in a year where Stranger Things is a non-issue. So
yeah.
That's kind of weird. I mean, you probably don't have the game's done and has to come out when it comes out. But like, yeah, there's a calculus where you put this out on the coattails of the final season of Stranger Things, and maybe even get Harbour to mention it a couple times during the press junket for Stranger Things, and maybe you get some interest that way. Yeah. But it's just I can't even call it a flash in the pan. Nobody even realizes this came out.
Yeah, I mean, somebody mentioned at the end of the show last week. I had already planned on playing this week to cover in this week's show, but only one person in the last 2 weeks asked, "Hey, where's Alone in the Dark?" That shows you something. Because if we miss stuff, usually there's 10 people in our chat like, "Hey, like, where's this game?" Like Rise of the Ronin the week before, or they're like, "Where's Rise of the Ronin?" Like, there's a bunch of people asking that. Only one person in 2 weeks asked, like, "Where's your review of Alone in the Dark?" That says a lot. So this isn't going to revive the IP. I don't know if this IP can be revived because
I don't know why they keep banging on it.
I don't either.
I would have thought the 2008 one would have put a nail in
the final nail
on this one finally.
I thought so too, but no. And I will say this.
That game, by the way, has the worst driving sequences in a non-driving game I have ever played.
I will say this, Matt. I think this is in fact the final nail. Because it's not selling well.
That, but like for whatever reason,
people will forget about it in 10 years and bring it back again. Maybe it's hard for me to see that happening because again, it's not a bad game, but it's not an amazing.
I mean,
game
I would have said that before this one too. Yeah, because they did it again between the 2008 one and this one, right? There was another Alone in the Dark in there somewhere, wasn't it?
I think so.
The fact that we don't even know that
exactly
is kind of the story of this franchise.
Well, this is kind of
like, you got to respect it for being kind of the first 3D survival horror game because the first one did predate Resident Evil. Yeah. But like,
otherwise,
so what? It's not.
I remember the New Nightmare. We went to San Jose for an event for that back in the day.
Yeah,
that was in 2001 or 2002, something like that.
Yeah, that was
somewhere around there.
Every once in a while, one of those horror games would drag you out to the Winchester Mystery House and call it,
I still have a notebook from that event that says Alone in the Dark: A New Nightmare on the front of it that I've never used.
That was the fourth one?
Maybe.
Was it?
I don't remember. No one remembers. Nobody remembers anything about this franchise. So no one cares because it's just nameless and faceless, and that's really the problem. It's like you think about Resident Evil, you can name like 4 people that have starred in Resident Evil games. Nobody can name who has starred in the Alone in the Dark games because they're just unrememberable, unremarkable.
Well, there's also no consistency. Like Edward Carnby is a different person in every version of these.
Yeah. And there's other cases where that has worked in pop culture, but it doesn't work here.
Like I was wondering early on when this first started, because there's a meta thing to that demo where she's making the paper mache out of a script or a manuscript of Alone in the Dark, and I'm like, oh, is this gonna like tie together as like is the Edward Carnby that Harbor plays gonna find the Edward Carnby that like was in the 2008 game, because the guy he's looking for kind of looks like that version of him, and then the guy that she walks in on, the guy she walks in on looks kind of like the original Edward Carnby. Yeah. In the in the game he's like 5 polygon mess. You can't tell what you just can tell he's got like a green jacket or something. Right. But like I was like, oh, is that supposed to be original Edward Carnby? Right. We're gonna have like a multiverse Edward Carnby merging thing. And it sounds like
that scene too took place in an alternate dimension.
Right. Okay. But there's no element of trying to unite the different versions of Alone in the Dark.
I try not to spoil stuff like that, but in this case, I'll just say no.
Okay.
I typically wouldn't answer that, but with this game, I'll just answer it.
A little too ambitious for this thing.
Yeah.
Maybe.
But again, I did enjoy it. So if you see this game on down the road, bouncing around for $40, $30, I would pick it up. Particularly if you're like a fan of the old school survival horror games. I think it does a pretty good job of replicating that experience. Nox809 asks, you say that, but then Alone in the Dark guy will be top of the BAFTA iconic characters list next year. Good job, man. That's funny. And let's see, there's one other one up here. Oh, how long is it? It's only like 8 or 9 hours long. Again, you can play as her again if you want to play it again and get more out of it. But
I mean, there are very few survival horror games that should be longer than that.
No, you're right. Yeah. And look, I never felt like it was dragging on or it lasted too long. And when it ended, I was never like, oh, I feel cheated. Like, it's the right length. We were talking about it earlier.
Yeah.
You make a game the right length.
I feel like this segment has gone on too long for me. So
let's move on. So there you go. That's Alone in the Dark, a reboot of the franchise. I highly doubt we'll ever see another game in the franchise because I think this one's going to kill it.
You can say that, but they're going to do it again. Like it's only been what the last one was 2015 apparently.
Was it?
Yeah, Alone in the Dark Illumination.
That's 9 years.
Yeah, another 9 years.
Well, maybe another Embracer comes along that's like, that's the best license we got.
Yeah, who is it? Who made it?
It's THQ Nordic publishes it, so Embracer. No. So there you
go.
go.
This made it out.
Yeah.
But you fired. Okay.
I was saying this a while ago. I'm like, why are they allowing this Alone in the Dark abomination to get finished?
It must have just been too far along.
But I'll say this too. Having now played this game, it is in fact or looks better than some of the other games that they canceled. So it looks better than Time Splitter's game. I'll tell you that much. So maybe they did make the right decision ultimately, but still the right decision would have been to just not release this game either, probably. But anyway, if you see it for $30, $40, pick it up. Otherwise, just keep on cruising by. Next up, I mentioned we were going to talk about a Square Enix game earlier in the show, and this is it. It's a game called Saga Emerald Beyond. Matt, have you ever been a fan of the Saga franchise?
No.
It is sort of
I've always found them obtuse and a little irritatingly difficult.
They're very challenging, generally.
I generally like the idea of them. I remember playing, the first one I played was the PS1 game shortly after Final Fantasy VII came out. Was it just called Saga Frontier?
Yeah.
And I couldn't get past the first sections of any of the characters' story. Like, I didn't understand how it worked at all.
They've nerfed the franchise over time. It's not that difficult. It's still challenging, though. Even this one is challenging. Now, the first thing I should say is that I know you hear Square Enix and RPG, and you're like, oh, Final Fantasy, it's going to have these crazy production values and all these awesome cinematics and this crazy story. This game, literally, as you're seeing right now, this is how it tells the story.
Yeah, well, it's a mobile game originally, isn't it?
This is also coming to mobile. So this is coming to Switch, both PlayStations, PC, and then iOS and Android. It launches April 25th. So to answer your question, yes, this is coming to mobile as well. But really, I think why they end up doing the plot this way, and this art just looks abysmal if you ask me, but the reason they do it this way is because this franchise has always been about playing multiple characters across multiple missions.
Looks like Persona fan art to me.
Art is terrible, man. It's literally terrible.
I like that. I don't like the character art.
So anyway,
their eyes are weird.
Yeah, I just feel like there's this weird, like, pixelated edge around everything. It just looks like
there is. I mean, it looks like blown up mobile.
Yeah,
art.
It looks bad.
This looks okay.
But this is the way they tell the story in the game. There are not these huge cinematics where crazy stuff happens. It's mostly
Saga's always been kind of a budget series in terms of comparison to the big boys of Square.
This has been Square Enix's budget RPG franchise. They have a couple.
Did he not get the memo for the costume party?
Right.
Or what?
There's a couple. So there's this one, and then there's the one we talked about last week. That's our sneaker of the week. Mana.
Yeah.
Visions of Mana. The Mana franchise is like that too.
Yeah. Mana's always been a little more traditional. Some of the Saga games have been pretty traditional, fantasy things.
Yeah.
This feels like it's taking more cues from the Shin Megami Tensei realm.
And I'm not going to talk about this that long, obviously, because, the interest in this game is it's definitely not Stellar Blade, that's for sure. But I do want to get it on your radar. So there are 6
It's not even Visions of Mana, if we're honest. Yeah.
No, you're right, actually. Yeah. So there are 6 playable protagonists in this. And there's a demo out right now on every platform it's available for. The cool thing that they did with this, Matt, is that every demo has a different protagonist that you can play. So I played PlayStation 5, and I had to play this guy. This guy has these pawns, basically, that are his party. So these little, almost like puppets that are a part of his party that can grow and get better as time goes on, but they're also very disposable, and you can pick up new ones, at any moment. The other protagonists are completely different. Each one of them does things completely different. Not just, with how they can, their mechanics, but also the setting. Their setting is completely different for each one of these. And that's why...
That's kind of the trademark Saga thing.
And I think that's why also the production values are a little worse in these games, because...
You got to make, 5 different games.
Yeah, basically. So I think that's why it's worked out that way. So I played this guy. He has these pawns that he can use as his party or whatever. But then there's, other protagonists. Their whole plot and all the characters in that are, robots. And it's sci-fi. And then there's another one that's traditional fantasy. So one thing I would say about this is
they like to do different time periods that sort of link up later.
It kind of satisfies whatever RPG itch that you have. Whether you like high fantasy, you like sci-fi, whether you like dark fantasy. There's a little something for everybody.
If you like good production values, you're going to be kind of out of luck.
Now, once you're in combat, I think the game looks okay.
It's all right.
It's not great, but it looks okay. The spells are kind of awesome. But that's the thing that separates this game more than any others is the combat. So it uses this weird... And you'll see it here in a minute once the combat gets going. But it has a timeline mechanic on... It's this bar at the bottom of the screen. And it shows you, one thing it does is it shows you how close you are to the enemy. Literally physical distance, how close you are. But it also shows you the order that that your party is in, whether some people in your party can attack or not. Because the other thing that's really important in this game is your formation. A lot like Unicorn Overlord, where formation matters a lot. It also matters in this one. Literally...
It sold 500,000 copies.
Yeah, but now it's on discount. It's already half off or whatever.
But it's the fastest selling Vanillaware or something.
Which is great. They deserve it.
For a game like that, that's impressive.
But now you're seeing it, actually. Perfect timing. So you're seeing formations. They're just as important in this as they are in Unicorn Overlord. In fact, there were boss fights where I had one formation, got wiped out in 2 turns, just changed the formation with the same party members, won the battle the next time. And there's a lot that goes into that. So enemies will have, as a part of their party, objects to block you from attacking them. So it may just be a wooden box or whatever, but the wooden box is a part of the enemy's party, and until you destroy that wooden box, certain party members in your party cannot attack. And so it's very important that you keep looking at that timeline, because it also, the amount of space that you have on the timeline will affect what the enemy can do. So if you allow the enemy to have a lot of space on that timeline, it means that they can pull off more powerful attacks, basically. So you need to watch what they're doing.
The text on this is bizarre. I cannot imagine that character saying the phrase pretty dang wacky.
Yeah.
But here he is.
The writing in this, the voice acting in this, all abysmal. Literally abysmal, the English voice acting in this. Again, I was where did you hire... It's a little bit like what we talked about last week. It feels like they're not native English speakers that they're hiring to handle the English voiceover in the game. So that's basically how the combat works. So the other thing that's important about formations is the formation that you choose determines how many attacks you have. So you'll see again when we start getting into combat here that every round you have a row of golden stars, and each star is basically an allowance for your attacks. So your character will have 4 or 5 different attacks at your disposal, and each one costs a star. Some are 1 star, some are 2. The bigger ones are 3 or 4 stars. But again, you need to manage that because you only have so many stars per round. So when you first start, most formations are going to give you like 4 stars, which means for the first round, you can only use 1-star attacks from like the first 4 members of your party, and maybe that 5th person in your party can't attack at all. And in that case, then they will just defend. And as you go, each round, an extra star will be added. So by the time you get to the end of the battle, you have like 12 stars, and you have 12 different like stars that you can use to spend for your attacks in that round. And so managing all that stuff becomes a problem and something that you have to do to become good at the game. But that is just scratching the surface, Matt. In fact, I'm not even going to dive all the way into all the systems in this game because it just becomes insane how many systems there are in this. There are 17 different worlds total in this, Matt. 17 different worlds. So again, like I do cut them a little bit of slack on the presentation in this because they're essentially trying to create almost 17 different games in one game, which is kind of crazy. So getting into some of the deeper systems, like your race matters a ton. Like if you're a human, you can use this thing called a glimmer system where you just spontaneously acquire new abilities out of thin air. But if you're playing as like, oh, I lost my space in the notes. I lost it. I lost all the details. But the bottom line is that each class gives you a different way to acquire attacks. So as I said, the humans, you just get attacks organically. Other ones, you have to do very specific things to add a new attack into your repertoire of abilities throughout the game. So your race matters in this, or your the type of character that you're using matters. The BP is the stars, basically. And the other thing, too, is that the enemies also use that same system. So they also have a set number of stars that they can use for their attacks. So again, monitoring where they are on that timeline that you're seeing along the bottom, and then monitoring how many stars they have left is important, too, because if they have basically bogarted all their stars and have just been using these very light attacks through the whole way, and they have like a ton of stars, they can unleash a devastating attack. So all of that plays into the strategy and the tactics in the game. What else is there? From there, it just starts to go crazy. There's like combos and buffs that you get based upon various things happening in the world. There's a variety of different species, as I mentioned. So I mentioned the monsters will just take abilities from other characters, whereas the humans they just materialize. Ephemerals die easily, but they get new abilities when they reincarnate. The mechs gain abilities and techniques from equipment that they equip onto their mechs. It just has a ton of depth to the combat. Now, obviously, your mileage is going to vary. Are you going to be able to get past the production values in this, Matt? I think that's everyone's big question for this, because if you're into turn-based combat, like, this is pretty freaking hardcore. It doesn't get much more hardcore than what you're getting here in this game. So, I think if you're just a fan of turn-based combat, I think you're going to love this game. But again, can you get past the production value? Coming off a game like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, where it's the opposite, where they put a ton of resources and money into the graphics and the voice acting and all that kind of stuff. Here they haven't. So it may be a little bit of a culture shock for people if they've been playing some of the other bigger RPGs. But this game does come out on April 25th. As you can see in the lower third there, it's coming to PC, both PlayStation, Switch, and both iOS and Android.
But you could be playing Ayuden Chronicles, so...
Which is also coming around at the end of the month. Yep, and we talked about that
2 days earlier.
Yep, and we talked about that in last week's show, and we will absolutely review this. Will we review this? I don't know. This may be all you're going to get of Saga Emerald Beyond on GameFace, because it's a very light week, and there was a demo out there to play. But again, this does come out on the 25th, so just keep it in mind if it's something that you're interested in. The other thing I'd say, too, you're seeing in the B-roll here, like, eventually you get into these worlds where... like, you have multiple objectives to accomplish. So this is kind of like a hub you're seeing in this B-roll right now. Each of those, there's wells all over the place. Each one of those wells you go to is a world you have to go to and fight all the way through and fight like a mini boss at the end. And then you get an object. And you take that object back into that overworld with you. And they're like, you need 3 of these. So you need to fight through 3 of the different well levels to come back. You have all the objects that you need to finish off that. And then you go into the next world, per se. So... it looks simple. The game is not simple at all. And to Matt's point, it is very challenging. I did get to a boss in this that I could not beat. No matter how many formations I tried, no matter how many different tactics I tried, no matter how many different pawns I tried, I couldn't beat him. I fought him 10, 12 times.
Your archenemy, Wooden Box B.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at earlier. Like, they can use the boxes in their formation to block you from attacking them. So what I found is like just take out the box first because then it opens up your whole party to be able to attack. So there's all kinds of little strategy like that in the game. But if you're not into that kind of stuff, there's probably not a lot for you here. Again, the game comes out on the 25th and it's called Saga: Emerald Beyond. All right. That brings us to our New York Sneaker Society Sneaker of the Week. And before we get going on that, if I can find it, here's a word from New York Sneaker Society. What's up, everyone? Shane here, and one thing you may not realize about me is that I am a total sneakerhead. That's right. I've been collecting Nike sneakers since the early 90s. My favorites are Air Max 95 and Air Max 97. Now, one thing that's different about me from your typical sneakerhead is that I actually wear the sneakers. And because of that, they can get dirty. And that is where New York Sneaker Society comes in. Using their advanced shoe cleaning products, I turned an old pair of Nikes that looked like this into this. With their cleaning products, your sneaker life can go from a year to 5 or more. I know that. I have shoes that are like 30 years old that I still wear because I've cleaned them. You can also lower your carbon footprint, haha, by keeping your kicks looking fresh. For my daily drivers, I also appreciate New York Sneaker Society's Refresh Spray to keep them smelling great and staying crisp. Head to nysneakersociety.co/sifted to clean your shoes like a pro at home and get 10% off your order. That's right, that's nysneakersociety.co/sifted for 10% off. That's right, people. Go to nysneakersociety.co/sifted. That's SIFTD. Make sure you use that URL because anything that you buy at their website, you get 15% off for using that URL. And they have kits, cleaning kits that run the gamut in price. They have their big kit that's like $40. They have the Essentials kit, which I'm telling you, having used all their products, if you get the Essentials kit, it pretty much has everything you need to clean up those old sneakers in your closet. Those are like $15. And again, if you use that URL, you get 15% off. So once again, head to nysneakersociety.co/sifted and get yourself a cleaning kit. And one thing that we like to do every week here on GameFace is our Sneaker of the Week, where we find a game that has kind of been jumping up the charts, or maybe it was a new debut for the week and people are talking about it. We try to find a riser, basically, one that's sneaking up the charts and creating a lot of interest. And that game for this week is a brand new game called Eternal Strands. Did you check this out, Matt?
A little bit.
So this
I know
is...
it's ex-BioWare people.
It's ex-BioWare, ex-Ubisoft developers, all working on their first new game with this brand new studio. It is a Shadow of the Colossus-like, but a little more action-oriented. So it's more like a traditional third-person action-adventure most of the time, but then it has these elements of where you're climbing up big bosses and toppling the big bosses. So I would argue it's a more action-focused approach to the Shadow of the Colossus template. How do you feel about that, Matt? Is Shadow of the Colossus like sacrilege to try to copy it? I mean, there's a little bit of it in Dragon's Dogma 2.
It's not sacrilege, but it's like you can't really recapture that. It's a singular thing. That one game, Pray for the Gods, tried to do it, and it didn't really...
I forgot the name of that game, actually. Yeah.
Didn't really work out tremendously well. Like, this looks kind of like Shadow of the Colossus crossed with Immortals Phoenix Rising.
Yep, it sure does. Yep, I agree. The art style, very, very similar, without a doubt. The other thing I would say, too, is it looks like there's an elemental angle to this, where you're constantly using ice and water and wind and all that type of stuff to help topple. Like, there's one shot in this trailer where she uses ice to, like, bind one of the huge Goliaths so it can't move. So it does look like it's kind of doing some of its own stuff here.
Yeah, it's a little more cartoony and a little more kind of...
less serious.
Honestly, it's a little more Power Rangers here. Like fighting the Colossi in Shadow of the Colossus is basically a tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't, like, she seems to be having kind of a good time.
Yeah, it's a completely different tone.
Yeah, there is no comparison there. There's influence, but there's no comparison for me.
The pedigree's there with this team.
But it's also like the gameplay of Shadow of the Colossus isn't really the draw.
No,
to me, like
it's not.
The fact that I can climb up a thing and stab it is
figure
not
out
the
what
point.
the hell's going on, basically. Yeah,
and kind of the presentation and the melancholy of it, and just sort of the larger picture, and like the detail of it down to the there's a tragedy and a horror to all of it.
Yeah,
and that is not clearly what they're going for here.
Yeah.
So sure, like I mean, I'm more interested in kind of it as a evolution of what they were trying to do in Phoenix Rising than what they're trying to like evoke of Shadow of the Colossus. But like, sure, I guess. The pedigree's there from the makers. So.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You're wondering why haven't they made another Phoenix Rising? Apparently, the people that made that game went on to do something like.
Well, they did.
We talk
they canceled the second one.
Well, and also we talk about like Ubisoft not putting stuff out, but it's also like there was a big brain drain at that company.
Oh, yeah.
Like a ton of people
left.
Like I don't know anyone who works at Ubisoft anymore. Like, and I used to know tons. Like, but they all left or got laid off, and that's kind of the end of it. Now a bunch of the people that did that went to other companies. They're going to get laid off from those companies. I guess the culling is not over.
Yeah.
Hopefully
it's over at Embracer though. Yeah. Embracer announced that it has finally stopped. That it's done restructuring. I'll believe that when I see it, but that's what it's saying.
See it. Like trying to prove a negative, but I guess we'll see.
But anyway, Eternal Strands, again, coming from former Ubisoft and BioWare folks. It is coming to PC, PS5, Xbox Series. No release date yet. My guess would be earliest, like, end of the year next year. Something like that. But I found it pretty interesting and pretty cool.
Like a January slot or something.
Yeah, could be. Again, it's called Eternal Strands. And I'm wondering what that means, too, in the context of what we saw there. I wonder if the strands are like the elemental stuff that she's doing there. I don't know.
Maybe, or just like the things that animate those big monsters.
Oh, that's true. That could be as well. Once again, our sneaker of the week for episode 383 is Eternal Strands. And that brings us to our last topic for GameFace 383. We're going to talk about a little adventure game that everybody is kind of talking about and reviewing right now. It's a game called Open Roads. Matt, I'm a little surprised that you didn't play this, actually.
Yeah, I didn't really notice it.
It's on Game Pass. I should bring that up for those of you who maybe are going to check out our review of this. You can get it.
I remember the trailer, but I just wasn't paying attention.
Yeah, you can get it, again, if you're a Game Pass subscriber, it's basically for free. You get it with your subscription. If you actually buy the game outright, it is $20. And the first thing I'm going to say before we get too much further into this is that this game is 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. It is 2 hours, and it is $20. And that is, in my opinion, way too much.
I mean, that's about what a movie costs.
It is. I understand everybody has a different... Yeah, I understand everybody has a different quotient for games as far as, like, how many hours they should get per dollar. For me, $20 for 2 hours, that's a little bit too much for me. Like, this should be $10, $15, in my opinion, at most. This is not just a walking simulator, although you may be thinking that by looking at this early trailer before we get into the actual gameplay of the B-roll. It is a point-and-click adventure game where you go room by room, you search the room, you try to find objects that you can interact with.
I'm having trouble with the 2D animation mixed with the 3D. I'm having the same reaction I did to that, was it As Dusk Falls game?
This game, I agree with you on this one. I liked As Dusk Falls art style. This one I do not. The other thing I would say, too, is if you watch the B-roll, you're not getting that they're not actually animating the mouths to what they say. It's just basically an emotion that they're trying to get to the player, and then they ramble on and keep talking.
Like, I think the animation style in this I like better than As Dusk Falls, but I think the whole world needs to be that animation style.
Right.
Like, you need to pick one or the other.
Yeah, crossing 2D with polygonal visuals very rarely ever works. It's hard, man.
Hard. I mean, Ayuden Chronicles does it.
Yeah,
and that works.
It does
because it's evoking an old style.
Octopath Traveler gets away with it.
HD 3D, the HD 3D or whatever they call that.
Yeah,
that
those
works.
games work. Yeah, this does not.
This is a. There's a way it works. It's a place where it works. Like if you animate them a little more. If they're a little more detailed, the animation, like I'm thinking about like Last Express, like that kind of character animation would, or like the later Monkey Islands, you could probably get away with a smoother animation style. But I don't know. Like, they don't even try to make the backgrounds look similar, and just in terms of color timing, that's a weird choice.
I agree with you. I don't think it looks. I don't think it's
like
a good
the detail
game.
on the stucco wall.
The texture on the wall.
Is like, it's like
it should be flat.
Why?
Yeah.
Like,
I hear you, man.
You've done too much. In a weird way.
You've gone too far. Yep. So this game is set in 2003. So everybody has like flip phones and like that's where the technology is at. The game centers around Opal, who is the mom, and Tess, who is the daughter. And they are, when the game starts, they are living in Opal's mom's house, so Tess's grandma's house, because the mom has been divorced and is going through a divorce. And as it turns out, the grandma dies. She has dementia, and she dies. And so you guys are cleaning out her house. And you're going to have to move out as well because she didn't leave the house to you. And so there's a whole undertone of like, where are we going to go? So they're cleaning out Grandma's old house. They come across like these weird things in the attic, like these bunch of clues that she maybe had a secret life, and they find this little key. And the mom is like, well, we used to have this summer home that we would go to, and I'm wondering if like a lot of this stuff is related to that summer home. So Tess, the daughter, is like, well, let's go check out the summer home. I've never seen it, blah, blah, blah. They go on a road trip, and they drive to the summer home. Once they get to the summer home, they discover that all kinds of crazy crap has been going on in their family that they had no idea about. And a lot of the game is find an object here, figure out where to use it. Unlike Alone in the Dark, it doesn't have a map that shows you where to go and use that object. So there is a lot of trial and error in this game, and not just a trial and error of like, I found this thing, where do I use it? But trial and error of going through every room and trying every object just to see if you can pick it up or not. So you burn, even, like, this game's only 2 hours long, you burn a lot of time doing what you're seeing right now. Looking at look at that glitch. But I'll say this, Matt, it does show you that this actually takes place in a 3D world.
Yeah. It is happening in real time.
Which kind of blew my mind.
They're playing honest.
Also, by the way, Matt, this game stutters even worse than Alone in the Dark. When you go outside and you're walking around the summer home, it's just like almost like a slideshow. And there are no graphical settings in this game. That's your only option. So anyway, you go to the summer home.
The mother is constantly kind of staring at a weird point slightly above and past the daughter's head.
Yeah.
in the two shots.
Yeah.
That's an odd.
Yep. So anyway, you end up going to the summer home. You poke around there. You find a bunch of crazy stuff that it makes you end up going to Canada. You take a road trip to Canada, and that's where the real revelations in the story come. But
you don't hear that sentence very often.
Yeah, exactly. Revelations in Canada. But then that's when you also realize that this story was a huge disappointment. That was my biggest issue with this, is that the payoff for this game is so terrible. It drags you along this plot for 2 hours, and then when it finally gets to the culmination of it, you're like, really? That's it? Like, that's how the plot is resolved? And it's not even like it ends on a cliffhanger, and you're like, oh, I guess it's a cheap plot tactic to get me to buy the sequel. It just ends poorly, period.
Open Road 2, Roadblock.
Yeah. And it's like there's a lot of like deception where like at first you think the dad is responsible for the divorce, and then something happens where it makes you think that the mom is responsible for the divorce. And
wow, they lived in a Disney science cartoon.
No, that's
apparently
the summer home that they showed there, actually.
Yeah, but that art style is like the old
right.
It's like science
Jetsons.
and technology.
Yeah, it's like the Jetsons. Yeah.
No, it's the old like 50s style like like the home of the future stuff.
The Fallout uses some of that stuff
Fallout
sometimes.
has that, yeah. Fallout has that sort of it's making fun of that aesthetic. Yeah.
Yep. But the bulk of this game is just wandering around in 3D trying to find things to interact with, and then once you get the item, trying to figure out where the hell you need to use it. There's lots of keys that you need here and there. Like they'll tell you like, oh, there's This game also does this, by the way, where there's one point where it shows you a map, and it's like, hey, you need to go dig up something out of the yard. They show you the map once, and then you can never reference the map again. So you end up wandering around in the backyard, because you didn't pay attention, because I just assume, I'm going to be able to look at this map again. So I didn't really pay attention that much to where the spot was in the yard that I needed to dig up, and then I go to the yard, I'm like, I couldn't find the spot, and there's no way to look at the stupid map again.
And they're not even drunk.
Right, exactly, yeah. So, there's a little issues with this that are just kind of endemic to the point-and-click adventure genre. This is not one of the better examples of it. Like, I didn't find myself emotional. This is one of those games, Matt, where I'm, like, reading other people's reviews, and I'm like, did we play the same game? Like, I hate to ever say that. I only say it, like, once or twice a year. But this is really one of those games where I saw everyone else's reviews, and I'm like, wow, okay. Like, you took something away from that game that I absolutely did not. Like, it isn't even like a coming-of-age story for the daughter, really. Like, I kind of thought that's where it was all headed. It isn't. She stays the same dumb, like, tween from the beginning of the game all the way to the end. The mom is just an emotional mess, and her mess is never really rectified at the end of the game. I don't know what people were thinking, and that's why this is in GameFace, because there are a lot of positive reviews of this game out there. Don't believe them. Like, I would definitely not spend $20 on this game. Even at $10, like, when it was over, I'd be like, I feel like maybe I got ripped off on that one. This is, for whatever reason, this is one of those games that's kind of becoming a critical darling. I have no idea why. But again, it's called...
It's a relationship that isn't portrayed much in games.
Mother-daughter, road trip, whatever, I guess. And I will say this, like, there was no tension between the mother and daughter either.
I don't know, you just could have called her really old.
Yeah,
There's your
but
tension.
there's like joke with each other. They're like the get along gang. There's no real tension where like the daughter finds out that the mom like tried to give her up for adoption or something crazy.
Clearly, you forget the Get Along Gang episode where the moose kid killed the lizard.
No killing in this.
They only aired that once.
So anyway, this is Open Roads. It's available for PC, both PlayStations, and both Xboxes. Not available for Switch, which is kind of odd.
It does seem like a Switch.
Right in the wheelhouse.
Thing, yeah.
Obviously, graphically, it wouldn't push the hardware or anything. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
Well, you said it was chugging, so maybe.
It may, actually, that's a good point. Maybe they try to run it on Switch and they're like, "This is bottoming out at like 5 frames a second or whatever," and we
need the cloud.
That's pretty funny. So anyway, that's Open Roads. I do not recommend it for purchase for anyone. Every once in a while, we need to come on GameFace and do some PSAs, some public service announcements, because sometimes games just start building momentum across the interwebs, and they aren't as good as maybe you might be led to believe, and I think this is one of them. Vincent says it is on Switch.
But probably worth the Game Pass download, I would imagine.
Yeah. Here's the other thing I would say, too, is if you do download it to play it on Game Pass, and you get about 30 minutes into it, and you're not enjoying it, just quit. It doesn't change or get appreciable better. The first 30 minutes is pretty much what you're going to experience for the full 2 hours. So if you get about 15, 30 minutes into it, you're like, this isn't for me, no regrets, turn it off, play something else. You made the right decision. So there you go. That's Open Roads. And Vincent says it is available for Switch, although I did not see that anywhere. So, but it should be. Obviously, it should be able to run on Switch, no problem. And with that, you know what it's time for. It's time for... That's right. What?
This is that Saber Juno. 2-hour game is decent if you're drunk.
Yeah. It goes by fast.
It's a real theme for today.
Yeah. It's time for Name That Game Tune, where I play 5 audio samples from a video game, and you try to guess the name of the game before this guy. A couple things before we get going. If you've won this year, you cannot play. Do not play. You can only win once every calendar year. So if you've won in 2024, do not play. Let somebody else win. Number 2, the chat goes into slow mode while we play, which means you can only enter one thing into the chat every 60 seconds. Don't waste your time just spamming the chat with a bunch of random video game titles. You're not going to win. And then the final thing is, make sure you play PC games, or that you know somebody who plays PC games, because if you win this, you win a free PC game, a free Steam code. Again, that is courtesy of soundwizardry.com. So make sure that you play PC games, or you can give the code to somebody else who does play PC games, because it's a shame to just give the code away to someone who's not going to use it. Don't sell it, please. Although I would argue you could probably do that if you wanted to. So this is presented.
If you really want $3.
Yeah, seriously. This is presented by SoundWizardry.com. SoundWizardry does audio for everything. They have helped us with the audio for GameFace when some of the audios got borked. They have fixed it, like taken all the static out of it. They have created audio, sound design for some of the biggest games in the industry. They worked on at least 2 Game of the Year candidates last year. SoundWizardry.com. Great people, great skills. Work with them in any way, shape, or form that you can. If you're looking for people to come and work on your games, I know just a couple weeks ago they were on location working on the audio for a game. So they're very flexible, but most importantly, really, and I know this matters as someone who hires people or has hired people in the past, they're just good people that you want to work with. They're the type of people you want to give money to. You're the type of people you want to give the pat on the back to. Go to soundwizardry.com. They'll handle any audio questions or issues that you may have. Go to soundwizardry.com. But now, let's get ready for some Name That Game Tune. Matt, are you ready? Let me turn up your headphones there so you can hear. I'll turn it up where it was last week. You were cool with last week? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Are you guys ready? We got 5 samples here. My guess before we do this one is either you guys get it on the first one or you don't get it until the 5th one. That's just my guess. So anyway, here we are. We're ready to go. Here's the first sample for Name That Game Tune for episode 383 in 3, 2, 1.
Mass Effect.
Not Mass Effect. Let's see if you guys have any guesses. Controller Zen says their bodies are ready. We
That's
have a winner.
crazy, yeah.
Yep, there it is. I knew it. We have a winner. I knew people would either get it on the first one or they would not get it until the last one, because I knew that first one was a little too obvious. But congratulations. That's 2 weeks in a row you guys got it on the first one. I got to do better. Who got it first? Rosencrantz.
No, Vortex Complex.
What'd you say? Oh, Vortex. Yep, Vortex Complex got it first, actually. Congratulations once again. Here's another round of applause to you, Vortex Complex. And now we'll go through the other 4, because I put a bunch of work into these for nothing. And here's the second one. Here's the third one. Would you have got it from either of those?
No.
No. Here's the fourth one. Longer than we usually do.
I would have known that one.
Yeah. And then here's the last one.
Like, I know it now that you, like, say what it is, but, like, that is really generic.
You wouldn't have got it from that?
No, I wouldn't.
What was different about the first one and the last one?
The first one I know because you just hear that menu sound all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, yeah, and I didn't place it because it's so... again, the sound design of that game is pretty generic.
Yeah.
That's more of a repetition thing. Like, I've heard that sound enough that I was like... It did sound like just sort of your generic sort of future-y interface sound. But hearing the fifth one, I can obviously see the hands moving now that you say what it is, but without knowing what it is, I would probably... It's just a monster.
Yeah.
I know the fourth.
That's the first scene in the
fourth one
cave.
because I recognize the sound of running into one of the player placed like signpost things you run through and activate. I know that sound.
Well, I think the first one has the motorcycle, actually, the jet bike on it. I think that's the first sound effect. It's predominant in that first sample.
Yeah, it's just I just find that a very generic sounding game.
Yeah,
which is funny because I played.
And I got it on the first one.
Yeah. I mean, if you played enough, I mean, that's the thing is, if you played enough of it, it's probably ingrained in your brain.
And look at how many people did. So Vortex Complex, you literally won by like a half a second.
Yeah, that's very.
Rosencrantz got it. Lorandos, first time chatter today, you got it. Congratulations. Ultimate Villain got it, and then Emperor Dread, obviously, Body Harvest. Climax 83 with Control. MVJSY, thank you for joining GameFace and chatting for the first time. Sorry you were incorrect with Starfield.
The number of like Starfield, Mass Effect, Doom, like just it's generic future-y sounds.
Yeah, sci-fi, whatever. Yeah. And I was hoping you guys might get confused with other sci-fi properties for the first couple, but you did not. You're just too dang good at this. So congratulations once again, Vortex. You can send me a DM right here on Twitch if you want to. You can send me a DM on SIFTD, where I'm at Shane. You can send us a DM on Twitter. I'm at Dinfire on Twitter, or you can send it to SIFTD Games on Twitter, which is at SIFTD Games. Bunch of different ways you can get at me. Just hook it up, and I'll hook it up. I'll get you your free PC game. Congratulations once again, man. Great job. And we have a little bit of time to do some Q&A here. Let's take a look at what you guys are asking us. Cinetyke, have you ever considered running the occasional poll on SIFTD about a popular topic of the week? We used to do a poll of the week on GameFace. We did it for months and months and months. We used to put a poll up in the forums. You guys would reply to it, and then we'd come on the show, and Matt and I would talk about the results of the poll. We did that for over a year at least.
I don't even remember that.
And then the problem was that you guys stopped responding to the polls. Because that's what happens. We start doing something, y'all get into it, and then slowly over time, you guys lose interest, and we end up not doing it anymore. And that's what happened with that. And then he says, I know you're not short of work. I am not. But I'm already doing a bunch of stuff for our sponsors, obviously. You know, I'm doing the Sneaker of the Week and a bunch of other stuff, bunch of extras. We're doing, you know, it's a lot more complicated now to do the stuff for Sound Wizardry. Name that game. Doing the tune is way more complicated than just grabbing 5 screenshots. So I'm already pretty stretched thin here doing GameFace. But if there's a good idea, I am open to it, and I will execute it. Vincent, after being pleasantly surprised by bad games the past couple weeks, what game are you going to be contrary on next week? Taxi Life or Well, let's just say I'm not even sure 100% what we're going to talk about in next week's show. Although I'm definitely going to play Turbo Golf Racing, which is like the Rocket League golf game.
Right.
Because I'm just interested in it. And I just
was a thing coming out today that's like a weird... it's like a weird little action RPG thing. I can't remember what it was called though. I will have to look it up.
Yeah,
but it didn't come out till today, so it wasn't something that could have been played yesterday.
And then I think next week's show we might be okay, but then the week after that we're pretty much golden for the rest of the month.
It's also possible that Ayuden Chronicle shows up this week.
We could get it into the show,
maybe,
because I don't think they'll have an embargo on that, right?
I mean, it's a Kickstarter game.
There's nothing they can do.
What are you gonna do about it?
Yeah. So once you get
we'll
it,
see. We'll see. Like, there's part of me that may leave it sealed, the physical copy, and because I do have a digital code coming too.
I hear
the
you.
digital code doesn't activate until 3 days before release, so that'll be the 20th.
Totally understand if that's what you want to do. Big Dave Lazard said he thought it was Metroid Prime. JM Rain asked, what was the game? It was Death Stranding. Yeah. Justin Horman, thank you for subscribing at Tier 3. I don't know if I've ever even seen that before. What is Tier 3?
I don't know what the tiers mean.
I don't know. But everything Justin Horman does is awesome. So thank you, brother. We appreciate it. Mitchell Ness asks, I just tore apart my Series X. Did you watch last week's show where I melted my controller on the top of my Series X? And had to replace a few parts. This tends to happen with me only with Xbox hardware. How often have you had to repair your consoles? Any consoles that were problem children for you? That's a great question, Mitchell. I like that. My GameCube was a problem, but only because I sent it out to get it altered. So when I got a GameCube, everybody at GameSpot, me, Ryan Davis, Jeff Gersman, Ryan McDonald, I think there was like 6 or 7 of us that sent our consoles out to this company called Colored Consoles. And they were like this company that would like take any console and change the color. We had no idea how they did it. We just saw their website. It was very slick. And like we saw the end products. They looked amazing. And as it turns out, like all they were doing was just spray painting them.
Yeah.
That's all they did. They literally just took the shells off of the hardware and spray painted them. When they sent them back to us and we opened up that box, we almost passed out from the paint fumes that came out of that thing. But one thing that they did do that was actually worth something, although I have a forest green metallic GameCube with a blue LED, which is pretty cool. But the coolest thing was they put a Japanese switch on the side of it, so I could switch between Japan and US. And that was great for the first couple years I had it, and then it started giving me errors. I don't know if there's a loose connection inside there, but like now when I play my GameCube, I have to like whack it, and then if I bump it, it'll stop working. So that kind of screwed it up, and I haven't fixed it. But otherwise, I haven't had many problems with hardware. I did get a red ring eventually on Xbox 360, but it took me longer than other people for whatever reason.
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden 2 killed my launch 360.
Yeah, not surprised.
That I got at that airplane hangar launch event thing.
Yeah.
I can't remember. I mean, I know my original PlayStation had the usual thing where you had to flip it upside down to make some stuff play, and I wouldn't give that one up because I had it modded.
My PS2
I had it
still
modded,
works
so
like
I played
brand new.
everything, and it had the three it had the RCA outs. It didn't have the that was the one everybody wanted, so I kept it as long as I could. I don't know. I replaced the GameCube once, and then I had to go find one that had the digital out because they'd stopped making that, and I didn't realize it till I got it home, and I'm like, what the fuck? I had to take it back.
That's right, the DOL 001.
Yeah, I had to replace one 360. I think that's it.
Yeah,
I've
been pretty lucky. I definitely haven't had to like open them up and like.
I guess the dumbest thing that ever happened was the first day I had a Game Gear. I picked it up to turn it on, and there was an ant in it. An ant had gotten in the screen. I turned it on, and it zapped the ant, and so there's a dead ant in my GameCube. Yeah, there's no way to get it out. So every time I played
you didn't return it.
Well, you couldn't. Like, it was open. And there's nothing they could do.
There's an ant in there. You take it back to the store, you got it, and you're like, dude, I want an ant-free Game Gear.
No, they wouldn't do it.
That's crazy.
It was open. It was open, and then ant wasn't
back
covered.
then it was different. Like returning things,
ant
you're
wasn't
right.
covered by shit.
Wow.
Like Amazon, you could just send it back and get another one now, but that wasn't how that worked back then.
Yeah.
Sears wouldn't do that shit.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's downstairs. I think I just shake the ant to one side to get off the screen so I could play without having an ant sitting there.
That's hilarious. I'm glad you asked that, so we got that story out of Matt.
That's a 30-year-old dead ant sitting in there, preserved perfectly.
That's hilarious. But yeah, I haven't had any real problems. I definitely haven't like opened one up and like had to like change parts or added a hard drive. A lot of people did that with the original Xbox though. They opened it up and put their own hard drive inside it, but I've never done anything
you should
like
also open up your original Xbox and get rid of that one capacitor that can leak.
Oh, right.
And ruin the motherboard.
That's true.
Which I haven't done, but it does still work.
I haven't tried my OG Xbox in 15 or 20 years. I
turned mine on like a year or two ago to play Obi-Wan.
Yeah. Can't think of too many other reasons to turn it on.
I mean, there's some stuff. There's Fusion Frenzy's backwards compatible now. I mean, if you really want to play Nightcaster, I guess.
You're getting to my point.
There's a couple of Star Wars games that aren't available otherwise. There's, you know what I'd love to play on a modern, like a backwards compatible, they'll never do because it's LucasArts and no one gives a shit anymore, is Wrath Unleashed.
Oh.
Which is that like weird.
That's a blast from the past.
Is that weird like turn-based strategy game, but the fights were like fighting games, like real-time like fight.
Yeah,
but the problem was, it wasn't a bad game, but the problem was it was like a minute to load a fight and then a minute to load out of the fight. And it was just, I'd love to play it on a modern...
Deal breaker.
I'd love to play it on a modern thing that skips the load time.
Yeah.
That would be interesting to me.
Okay, last question before we go. Congrim 1. Will you consider covering Children of the Sun from Commander Fett? Yes, I'm going to play that. We will talk about it next week.
Is that team shooter?
No, it's a crazy like puzzle sniping game where you go and try to eliminate a cult. Like you were in a cult and they obviously treated you like a cult treats people, and you go back with a sniper.
It's not multiplayer?
No, you go back with a sniper rifle to exact revenge.
Maybe that's the thing I was thinking of.
We'll cover it next week's show for sure.
And there's another game that came out like today or yesterday that was like a team-based online game that was like a character shooter sort of thing that had a weird name that you would not think was that.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I swear it was Children of the Sun.
No.
Because I looked at that and I thought, oh, that looks
It's a single-player game.
There was something I looked at. I was like, oh, that looks interesting and sounds like an RPG title. And I looked it up and it was an online team shooter.
Yeah, it's not Children of the Sun. Our last question from Congrim.
That's what it was. Gigantic.
Oh, that went away and they brought it back is what happened.
Yeah.
Congrim, I've been feeling a point of oversaturation with all the games being free with subscriptions. I've found myself ignoring every recent sale. Even good AAA games that are $10 to $15 seem like a waste of money. I think this has an effect on the recent sales of the industry, oversaturation that is. I'd rather dig through my library unless there's a day one I'm waiting for. Pactor just talked about this. Yeah, Impactor Factor. They're asking him, like, what's going on with the layoffs and everything. His number one thing is, like, people they're playing free-to-play games. And they're not spending money on the big games anymore. And, like, they'll pick, like, their one big one. Everyone piles on and buys that big one. But then the smaller fries are just losing out. And, yeah, I mean, that is real. Like, what you're experiencing, a lot of people feel that way. They're like, wait a minute, I can play, and I mean, they've been around forever. Like, I was saying this to myself back when I was a crazy, like, League of Legends head, where I was playing League of Legends for 3 hours every day. Like, I was like, wow, like, why do I need to buy games anymore? I just play this game forever. Like, now there's so many games like League of Legends that you can play forever. It's hurting the industry. There's no doubt about it. Game Pass hurting the industry. When you can spend $15 and just play a bunch of games instead of buying games individually, that hurts the industry. So I think it's a lot of things that are just all coalescing together to cause the shrinkage of the industry, the layoffs, etc. But that's definitely one of the big ones, Congrim. I think so. Anything you want to add there, Matt?
Not really. I mean, that's what they wanted it to be.
Yeah.
So that's what it is. You know, like there was some poll or something that was basically like 60% of gameplay of every year from like core gamers is like games released in the last 6 years.
I saw that the other day.
Something it's like, yeah, well, like, look, man, if we stopped doing this show, I probably wouldn't buy a new game till Outlaws. Yeah. Like, I got plenty of things to play.
Yeah, we all do. Because you're handed free games. That's the other thing. You're handed free games every week. From Epic Game Store, from your Amazon Prime subscription, from
I don't even
your
need that.
PlayStation Plus.
I don't even need that. I'd go back and play the Mass Effect trilogy again.
Right.
I'd play the Yakuza games
favorites.
again. I'd go back and do like series playthroughs of things. Big stuff like that. Like revisit my favorites. Like you don't need the new thing all the time.
Yep.
And some of the stuff that I'd replay was the new thing at one time. But like, it's just what am I? This April, what else are you doing? Like I went back to Assassin's Creed Mirage for a reason.
Yeah.
That's not like it's an old favorite, but it's like maybe I'll revisit this that I didn't feel like I squeezed everything out of it.
Yeah. Yep. There's lots of ways that you can save yourself some bucks if you need to. That's
God, like there's no reason you would need another game after Dragon's Dogma 2 until at least August.
No, you're right. It's huge. Yep. A
Unless
lot,
you hate
a lot of
Dragon's
games are
Dogma
that
2.
way too.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. These games are like 80 hours long. It takes you off the board.
Yeah.
Like it matters.
Like maybe that's part of the reason for the 8-hour thing that Ninja Theory's talking about. Is like we want you to finish this game, so you want something else.
I mean, it makes sense. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's like the opposite of the free to play theory, where it's like we want you to play this forever, whereas like a one-off game wants you to finish it and move on to the next one-off game.
So you keep spending money. Yep. All right, that's going to do it for GameFace episode 383. If you're listening to this show on any of the podcast services out there, give us a review. It doesn't cost you anything, and it can help us big time. Again, I mentioned it last week, but we got a bunch of reviews on Spotify, and immediately the next week, our view count, our play count went up. It makes a difference. So please, if you're on podcast services out there, review the show at the very least. You can do that. It doesn't cost you anything. It takes you a minute. Even if you just go 5 stars, most awesome gaming podcast. We'll take it. Like, you don't have to get wordy. Just review it very quickly, and please give us those 5 stars. Also, if you would like to help us, you're listening on the podcast services, or you're watching on YouTube, head to patreon.com/sifted. If you pledge just $4 a month, and I think we're the lowest Patreon left at this point, gaming Patreon. I don't think anyone's doing $4 anymore. For just $4 a month, you get all our content early. You get GameFace, this show, at least 3 days early. You get Pachter Factor a week early. Again, for just $4 a month. Of course, you can pledge more if you want to. We have tiers there and all that kind of fun stuff that happens on Patreon. We'd appreciate it very much. That's the best way to do it. But if you don't have any money and you still want to help us financially, then there's always Twitch Prime. If you're watching on YouTube, go down below. If you've already hooked up your accounts, maybe you did it 2 years ago for us and you just haven't resubscribed, there, again, down in the description, there's a link you can click. You just click that, click. You've just given us $2.50. So please do that. It's free. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, it costs you nothing. It's a part of your benefit. Stick it to Amazon, as Pac likes to say, and stick it to Big Brother, as I like to say, and give us that free $2.50. We'd appreciate it very much. So we'll be back next Tuesday. Thanks to everybody who was in chat. You guys are awesome as always, fact-checking us, adding context to our discussions, reminding us of things that we forgot. You guys are great. We're here every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern at twitch.tv/SiftedGames. So have yourselves an awesome week full of awesome games. We'll see you next Tuesday. GameFace is up and out.